Is my audio okay?
Yep, fine.
Thank you. We're live now. Yep.
Thank you all who attended this afternoon for our Infrastructure Services meeting for committee meeting for the 9th of March 2021. This meeting will be audio recorded and those in attendance should refrain from making any defamatory statements. There are to be no other recordings of this meeting without the prior authorisation of the committee. Do we have any apologies?
Mr Chair, one from Councillor Driscoll, I believe.
Can we move it, please?
Move.
Accept the apologies.
Move.
Seconded. I'll accept them for the chair. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Any declarations of interest?
Yes, I just have a standing one in that I'm a Movie Road resident and my husband is one of the advocates for the other end of Movie Road, village reticulation water system.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Abbott. Okay, so we'll move now into public participation, but I'll ask for a suspension of standing orders and move into ISC 3.10, local roads level of service review. So I'll ask Ange if she'd like to come to the microphone, please, and present your presentation. You have 5 minutes, which uninterrupted, that any councillor can ask you questions of clarification, but you are not able to ask the councillors questions. We'd just like you to answer. So yep. Please feel free to start. You like to turn the mic on?
It's on?
It's on, is it? Okay, good.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, Mr Chairman and councillors. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the residents and road users of Yeronga Road. I have lived on Yeronga Road for 10 years. And over this period, I've noticed an increased number of road users. Yeronga Road is used as a shortcut for many people living in Bunnan, Upper Dartbrook and surrounding areas heading to Muswellbrook. It is not just utilised by the residents or those visiting residents and businesses. In recent years, the road no longer holds more than 5 to 6 weeks post-grading, with significant deterioration starting at as little as 1 week post-grading. This poses a significant safety risk for road users. As well as the safety aspect of the road, we as residents have significant maintenance issues on our vehicles. And one resident in particular who runs a successful equine business has lost thousands of dollars in revenue due to horse floats and trucks not wishing to travel on Yeronga Road. At present, we understand the road is only scheduled for grading once every 18 months. Last year, we were fortunate enough to have it graded 3 times. However, each time the road was in need of repair again within weeks. Recent rain has shown that there doesn't appear to be adequate drainage. And unfortunately, when it rains, water pools, creating large potholes and crevices. The current design of Yeronga Road needs to be reviewed. Whilst ever council continues to grade and do patch repairs on an inadequately designed road, it will never withstand traffic and weather conditions. The most desirable outcome for the safety of road users would be to one day obtain funding from the state government to tar seal the road. However, in the meantime, a better maintenance program and review of the current design to include crossfall and deeper table drains should be reviewed. Ultimately, we don't believe council has a complete picture of the number of road users. Each morning, I myself see many mine shift workers and heavy trucks utilising the road. Unfortunately, the last time the road monitoring system was put on Moobie Road, just before the gravel commences, the road was in desperate need of repair, resulting in inaccurate counting as people tend to use the long way around. Once grading has been completed, word seems to spread and everyone comes along and uses it as a thoroughfare. Can you please recommend to council that the General Manager instruct staff at the next maintenance grading of Yeronga Road to have the road monitoring system reinstated to see what happens directly after grading, along with consideration given for a better design and more frequent maintenance plan? Thank you very much for considering our concerns.
Thank you, Ange. Anybody have some questions that they'd like to ask Ange?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, not really a question, just Ange, thank you for firstly meeting the General Manager and myself back a couple of weeks back out on your beautiful property. We all certainly realise, I think everyone in this room realises the struggle we've got with Yeronga Road, Clifton's Road and all those roads. It didn't take the General Manager very long to agree with the drainage that we got it. We're certainly going to, as council, we're certainly going to keep trying to get grant funding to get those roads sealed, but depending on grant funding, etc. But now it's up to us, as hearing your talk a while ago, and what we're going to talk about in a minute is to try and find more funding to give you a better road service. As we said, 18 months and we did it 3 times. So we certainly all agree that the road is not up to standard. So I thank you for your time, and you're quite welcome to come back at the council meeting and give the same presentation.
Mr. Mayor, I have one question.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, that was certainly a good engineering scope of what's wrong with the road. I agree. I'm going to ask Sam if he has any comments of what can be done in the initial stage to try and address some of those issues.
Through the chair, I guess we just continue the current maintenance program that we've got. Obviously, sounds like we need to improve on some of the drainage issues out there. So in the short term, we can probably address those. But the surface of the road, which is the gravel, we potentially need to look at that longer term.
Just supplement to that question, is there any way in which that the road, when it's graded, I'm assuming it has a lot of corrugations. The last time I was out there, it had corrugations, a lot of pothole, a lot of large gravel. Is there any way that that can be more compacted?
Through the chair, we've got our normal maintenance program, how we go about preparing the roads. So corrugations normally means a deep rip and relay. And from my understanding, that's what the guys have been doing. However, the type of gravel that's on that section of road doesn't withstand the traffic volume at this point.
The actual gravel, you say you've been deep ripping. How successful was that? It doesn't sound like it has been very successful. Is there any different way it can be done? Or?
So we've tried, through the chair, we've tried a couple of different methods. Initially, it was skew and gravel used out on that road, which is a round rock, which unravels quickly. So then we put tufa on top, which is different again. So we've tried a few different combinations. I'd have to go out and have a look to see which section in particular we're talking about, but we resheeted probably 18 months ago with tufa out there. And from my understanding, that section was holding up all right. But we just don't have the money in the budget to resheet the whole road.
And what would the program be, in other words, to do that? In other words, what would be needed a road without, I mean, we'd all like a tarred, which is probably what we will aim for, but the, perhaps Jeff, you might be able to answer some of that. Is there any, what I'm trying to say is the short term, we need to do something in the short term until we can get funding, which we'll be pushing funding, and I'm sure Ange would certainly probably write a letter to support. Is there any other way in which we could address that problem?
Well, we're talking about one particular road. Unfortunately, there's more than one road in our network that needs service. So what we're currently trying to do is service the roads best we can with the allocated money that we have. And unfortunately, it doesn't cover all the roads or all the defects.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Chair, may I just say something there? I know I'm not a member of this committee.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, before the former Director of Infrastructure Services left our employ, I actually took him out to Yeronga Road and we drove along it together. During that time, we had a conversation. He told me that the ripping was inadequate. The staff weren't doing it properly. It wasn't deep enough. It wasn't getting the job done. And we weren't even hitting budget for the day. So I believe that it was about 2 Ks a day we're supposed to hit. Is that right when we're doing ripping and grading?
Through the chair, that's the target.
Yeah. So we were hitting one and we weren't actually doing it properly.
Hang on, one at a time, please. Sam, you have the floor.
So through the chair, 2 Ks is our target. However, it depends on the condition of the road at that point in time. So if it needs a deep rip, it potentially could take longer. If there's additional drainage works, it could take longer.
Yeah, I agree completely. Understand that, not a problem. But the problem was there wasn't additional drainage being done. There wasn't the deep rip being done, and we were only getting 1 K. And I get phone calls about this road a lot, as does every other councillor in the room. And so does every staff member. We need to do something about this.
Okay.
Through the chair again, I think I recall this conversation. It was said that we weren't deep ripping. Well, in actual fact, when I went out on site, we were. However, I guess we'll just have to monitor the staff a little bit more to make sure that they are using the correct processes at the correct time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I'm a bit concerned that we would rely on funding to do this regular maintenance. It does concern me because obviously we need to do this maintenance all the time anyway. And there are a couple of terms I wasn't entirely clear on. I think, was it ripping or deep ripping or what? I don't know what that means.
I'll let the engineer reply to that. Thank you.
I mean, if you want.
No, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chairman, Councillor, the funding required is just our normal maintenance funding, councillors. So we have a budget of 2 million, close to 2 million or 2.1 mil that we use for our whole road network, and we do grading. I think we grade about 1,200 Ks a year. That's our target. 2 Ks is a bit high at the moment. Like depends on Yeronga Road, you wouldn't do much more than a K and a bit because of the deep rip. Yeah, which means at the back of the grader you've got rippers. You know, you've got like a plough or a tractor that goes right down. You might deep rip that, what, 200 mil, 300 mil, Sam? Depends what's there, gravel wise.
Probably 100 mil.
If you'd like to put the phone
maybe a bit deeper than that in places. So, and then put it down with water and compact it and roll it. I think the material out there, if there is material that Sam's mentioned, it's the conglomerate from Kiln Pit. It doesn't hold together. There's not enough clay in it. So, you know, that we could be looking at that. But when you talk about improvements, like immediate improvements till we do get funding, this is a priority under our initial seal program, which we have a list of roads, and I'm pretty sure that Yeronga is up about 3. We've got Hunter Road, which cops 200 vehicles a day between Moonam and Elliston. Number 2 is Middlebrook Road for up to the wash pools, which is a safety issue with, well, it's below the Barrington Tops and Moonam Brooks roads, and then number 3 is Yeronga. So it is about getting funding for initial seal program. Our council's policies, we can't afford to expand our network unless it's through development or funding for initial seal.
So just to clarify, so the funding that we'd be looking at trying to get is for sealing, through you, Mr. Chair, it's for sealing the road.
It is for initial seal of that road. At the moment, it's a gravel road, and if we put a seal on it, it's expanding our seal network. At the end of the day, I know this is a bit hard to believe, but maintaining a seal road over its life cycle is more costly than maintaining a gravel road. So, but our target for changing the road from a gravel service to a bitumen service is usually about 220 vehicles a day. And that's the cut-off point. You know, that's when it starts to deteriorate. The amount of vehicles, the type of vehicles that use that road, it deteriorates quicker with about that level, 220, 230. So you put a seal on it and it's cheaper to maintain. But anything less than that, it's not beneficial at this stage to do it.
And through you, Mr. Chair, another, just with respect to gravel roads, I know on our road, which is Movie Road, and I live on the gravel bit, there's a lot of gravel on the side of the road. Do we ever reuse the gravel on the side of the road?
Yeah, yes, we do. I mean, that's one of our, just not an improvement program, that's just our normal maintenance. That the first thing we did before we brought a truckload of gravel in is pull all the gravel up from the edge of the roads, mixed in with the rest, and shake the road up. And we try and put a good crossfall on the roads, like 6%, 6 or 7% on the road, so the water stays off. And I know that we do have issues with drainage, and through Mr. Chairman, we are working towards improving, or hopefully funding that part of the maintenance budget, that we can actually get more drainage improvements done on our gravel road network. That's what we're targeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Just before you, Mr. Mayor, do you think, Sam, that perhaps not enough attention has been paid to the drainage there, which was causing some of this problem after it's been graded?
I'd have to have a look, but if the water's on the pavement itself, yes, it's a drainage issue, but it's more about the grading formation and making sure you've got the right ground line. If there's water laying in the table drains, encroaching into the pavement, then that would be more a drainage issue, I would see. And then we need to get that water away.
All right, thank you. Mr. Mayor, you have another question.
One more, Sam, through you, Mr. Chair. We're supposed to do one grading in 18 months. There'll be a cost of 15 to 18,000. That'd be roughly correct to run a grader crew for 5 days. Correct?
Yeah.
So this year we've graded 3 times at a cost of 45,000. Something's not adding up. So either our work's not good enough, or we just got the wrong compound on it.
So you just need to, through the chair, you just need to double check those figures and make sure that when we're talking about a grade, it was either a full grade or a part grade. So if we've been back out to that road, it could be that we only did the bad sections.
Can I get those figures, please, sometime? Yep. Thank you.
Hang on. Will you, Jeff, just bring phone off, please.
Yeronga 1 would be classed as a rural 1. Rural 2?
No. Through the chair, it's rural 3.
Rural 3, yeah, it's 12 months.
12 to 18 months.
Once per annum, yeah. So it's copying more. Obviously, we are grading that. We're focused on grading that road more often than not, which is one of our aims to improve the service levels. But to get 3 grades, and so obviously that indicates that it's not what we're doing is not working with the gravel. The gravel there is not right. So we'll have to review our practices. We'll find out what's there and go from there. But there is it is high on our initial seal program. I'm sure that we can pick on some of these roads that we do have a big maintenance issue with, and the maintenance burden dollar-wise. And we can see we can implement our practices. It's close to town. People can monitor what's happening. People can see the improvements that we do. And then we can check ourselves whether it's working or not. Then we can implement that in other parts of the Shire. So I'm sure I've got, this is further discussions we're having with our improvement program on our gravel roads. So
All
good
right.
road to start on.
So, Mr. Chair,
Okay, look.
can I just ask one more question?
Just only one more then, please.
It's just with respect to the rat running that Anne just mentioned is happening on the road. How can we assist with that? How can we, obviously you sort of said we should do more monitoring or put the monitors back. So what can we do? Because that obviously has an impact on the road. If more vehicles using it. Yeah.
Well, I'm a true believer that the roads need to be used. It should be used. So that's what we build roads for. So all we can do there is just monitor it, and hopefully if it indicates that it's the traffic volume has gone up from 50 to say 150, 200. Then we just need to check that. We can actually do that quite easily by our tubes, and then that'll give us a good indication of actually what's using it. But if there's any heavy vehicles, they're the ones that cause the damage. So
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's the easiest thing that we can do is confirm those numbers. We'll definitely do that. There's a discrepancy. I just wanted to thank you for coming in and talking, and also ask you, because the issues that you raised are kind of addressed in these two late reports. So I just want to check that you had a copy of these.
No, I don't.
Okay. Can we make sure that we...
Yeah, I think
we'll talk through these now.
Yes, we will too. And thank you very much for presentation and having patience to. It is a complex issue, and I did want to bring that out to see that, to show just what council has been doing and the concerns, and also the what has to be done, because it's a big job, and it's not working well because of the material that we're trying to use, and we're trying to address that. And that's exactly what this next section is about: local roads, levels of service review. But I'm sure that Sam will take on board those drainage issues and things like that, and we'll just see what we really can. It is a problem. We recognise that. Thank you. Okay, ISC 3.10, local roads level of service review. Who's going to take this? Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah.
You're going to take that?
yeah, I'll start.
Okay, would you like to bring your...
Sam will jump in, and Gavin, Alan, and Bill.
Yes. Gavin, we don't like shaking heads here. We like them nodding, so we know that you're going to participate.
So the purpose of this report basically is to outline current budget requirements applied to council's road assets. Basically generally because we're looking at our preparation of our next depot. 21-22 and a 4-year program.
Yeah.
So the report outlines some improvements, some of the reviews we've undertaken, the length of roads. We've got the 5 major activities that we undertake both on our gravel network and seal network. And what we have then is a comparison of budget required, which is only a calculated budget required, but it's pretty accurate, and then currently what's in our budget. And when I reviewed this report again, I've gone back to some old reports, and we do a lot of data collection over a period of time. Really, the amount of money the council is allocated to road maintenance has not kept pace with actually the cost, cost of doing it. Now, you can, as I said, there's 2 ways to measure that. There's the community who let us know exactly what they think about our road network, and that's through the number of CRMs and customer requests we through the complaints. And there's also a technical way to look at it, and I know myself and Sam, and I know the rest of the engineers go out, and you can really see the deterioration in our road network.
Yeah, bring it around closer to you, man.
In our road network over the last, say, 4 or 5 years. And with our bridge stocks, the same kind of thing. But we've been lucky with the bridge stock that we've received funding to catch up. So that's the basis of this report. So I just thought I'd go through some of the figures, if you want me to.
Yeah. What page are you on?
Page 2 now.
Page 2. We're all on page 2.
Yeah.
And you've got a copy of that? Good.
And I'll just go to a little dot point up the top there. I know we've all read this before, but this is how important our road network is. We do a community consultation every 2 years and stuff like that. And the question we ask is, when asked if there was one thing the council could do to make the Shire better, what would it be? 40% of the respondents surveyed responded improve our roads. When asked, what do you least like about living in the Shire? 15% responded cited poor condition of roads. That's number one. That's the highest concern of our population, residents in the Shire. And I think it's got the biggest gap of, what's that, approval level compared to satisfaction levels. So it's the biggest gap we've got. So we've got to actually reduce that gap. Coming down here, our 5 major maintenance tasks on our road network is maintenance grading, unsealed road gravel reshooting, bitumen reseals for our seal network, heavy patching for our seal network, which we don't seem to be doing enough of. And on the end there's a curb and gutter renewal program. Curb and gutter, we've got 120 kilometres of curb and gutter in the Shire, and it's our biggest backlog of works. I think it's up to $1.7 million. So if you drive around the towns, especially Scone and Rundle, you'll see the old curbs probably being lifted by trees or heavier vehicles, or the garbage truck that picks up all the garbage these days. They're 12-tonne, 13-tonne trucks on the side of it, right on the side of the curb. That's doing all the damage to our curbs. So a bit of focus has to go into curb replacement. Just going back to page 2, I'll start with unsealed road maintenance grading. You'll see our classifications there of link roads, which were the regional roads. We do not have any regional road unsealed now that we've completed 358. Rural collector, we have 23 or 73 Ks. Local access R2 roads, we've got 228. R3 roads, which is Yeronga Road, we've got 428 Ks. Rural access roads, we've got 265. And we have about 75 to 100 Ks of unmaintained road network that we'll never touch. Going through that, we've got 3 crews that do the maintenance grading, as Sam mentioned before. We've got a current budget of 1.8 million. You look at the little table. It gives you the cycle length of our road network. We should be doing 1,200 kilometres per annum. It costs us $4,000 a day. We have 600 days per year that we can actually grade. Useful life 1 year is crazy. We spend $2.4 million. We're only getting 12 months out of it. That's what we have to do. So our grading need for the year is 2.4 million. We have a current budget allocation of 1.8. We have a gap of 600,000. Now that 600,000 gap, if that was given to, if that was actually, if we could fund that, that would include drainage improvement works and spot gravelling. With a small up, with a 10% increase in productivity gains to get our network up from 1.8 Ks a day to 2 Ks per day maintenance grading. On the second, page 3, so maintenance grading is one of our major activities. Page 3 is our unsealed gravel reshooting program. Gravel reshooting, we want to have 150 to 150 millimetres of gravel on our road. Our biggest issue at the moment, a lot of the roads we have, there's no gravel, so the guys can't grade. They're just grading up rocks and stuff, so they can't grade. So that getting our 1K or 1.5 Ks a day, it's not viable. So those roads need to be gravel reshooted to allow the boats to grade those to be able to form up 6% crossfall. So we have to get a minimum of 100 mil on there. Now the cost of doing that over a 20-year cycle, we put 150 mil of gravel on the road. We usually lose about 10 mil per annum through dust, wear and tear and whatever. 15-year cycle, but we go out to 20 because we do a bit of spot gravelling. We've got a cycle length of 750 Ks. It's $35,000 a K. Useful life's fine. Average kilometres per year, we need to do 37.5 Ks. That's a reshoot need of 1.3 million per annum. We currently have a budget allocation of 500. You've got a shortfall there of 800,000 per annum. Bitumen reseals. We've done a lot of work on bitumen reseals. We're actually spot on with reseals at the moment, but our biggest issue with reseals, we cover the network 13.5 and 35 Ks per annum. We have a reseal need of 1.6 or 1.7 million. We spend 1.6. The biggest issue is we're not doing the next one under, which is the heavy patch program. So there's no point in resealing a road. Well, to get your 15 years out of your reseal, you need a reasonable pavement. So if you'll need to do heavy patching first before you do your reseal on top. Or you can actually do a reseal over a bad road, knowing that you're only going to last for 7 years. So, you're just preserving that road to renew it in 7 years' time. You've got a gap there of 370,000. Over the next page, in curb and gutter replacement, you've got an annual gap of 260,000. So as we said here today, total funding shortfall or gap, I would say, is 2.177 million. Now, it's only for notation for council in preparation of the 21-22 budget. The shortfall, as outlined here, is maybe difficult to allocate without taking funds from other areas that significant reductions in other areas and other services provided by council. So I guess that's the crux of this report. And I think the lead up discussing Yeronga Road was a good lead into this to say this is what happened. Yeronga Road 10 years ago wasn't too bad. So a combination of lack of different gravels, build up drainage, wiped off before and your drainage not working anymore, combination of more vehicles, just gives you an indication of what will happen to the whole network if we don't start improving. Job done.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr Chair, Jeffrey, thanks for that. It's what I think a lot of councillors have been saying for a long time, and I'm not going to sit here and blame staff or operators for the road conditions. It's completely and utterly the budget. It's not big enough for all our rural roads, and that's what this is all about. I thank you for that presentation.
Through you, Mr Chair. Would it be possible, can we make representations to our local member to urge the government to fund this appropriately? I mean, this shouldn't come down to grant funding, it should come down to proper funding, because we're not the only council that's suffering, and we are suffering. And as you know, as has been pointed out, the money that we need for roads through our shire and through other shires just hasn't kept up. And it makes us look bad, but then at the end of the day, we don't have this money. And if we need to go back to state government and say, come on, give us what we need and what we had. Because when you look back 20 years ago, we had more. So can we make representations? Can we change this recommendation to urge our our local member to, to start seeing that councils, especially this council and his shire, are fully funded appropriately and have kept up with all the increases that have happened over the years, but we haven't. The funding to us hasn't.
Look, I agree entirely with what you're saying, Councillor. I do know that representations have been made, not only by the directors, but by the mayor and also some of us individual councillors, and that has happened. I do find too that there has been a devolvement of responsibility by governments, putting it down on the local government, and local government have not been funded to do those things in many areas. But look, I think that we need to do that, continue to lobby our governments and also our federal government, because our federal government can assist in certain ways, perhaps take some of the pressure off on another road when that funds could be freed up to do our local roads. But they are falling behind. And when in 2012, when we came onto council, elected onto council, there was an Opus report, I think it was, $50 million to reshoot our roads and bring them up to standard. That was back in 2012. I don't know what it would be now, but that was recognising the thing and the shortfall. And this is what's wrong. It's the shortfall each year. It's not being funded. $1.8 million. We've got $2.2 million, I think, that's required. We only got 1.8 last year, and wonder why that the engineers can't and maintenance crew can't do the job properly. So, Jeff, you got your microphone. Do you want to speak?
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, we do get a fair bit of funding. We get roads to recovery funding from the feds. We get a lot of grants under the local roads improvement program. We've got country roads improvement. So there's opportunities there for grant funding. We do a lot of our renewal. Renewals required on you know, we do a lot of our renewal on our regional road network. You know, we've got 6, 7, 8, 9 Ks of Main Road 62, which is going to Mirabel Road. We've got 9 Ks there to do the next 12 months. You know, and the road's only 60 Ks long, so that's what 10 out of 6. That's a sixth of the road. We've got another couple of Ks there that we're doing from Halls Bridge back up to Murdering Hut Gully under the repair program. So the repair programs are a yearly thing. Like our council, we always try and go for 250,000 out of the repair funding, and we match that with another 250. So there's opportunities for funding. We've just completed, we've got Beltrees Hill, which is going to be what, 3 Ks, 4 Ks. So the renewal program or pavement renewal is pretty well covered, and so it makes our figures look good sometimes, but it's the reseal program where we're not doing the heavy patch. So when we talk about heavy patch, out of a kilometre of road, you're looking at say 10 to 15% or 20% of that road to heavy patch. And then when you start getting 20% of a segment of road to be heavy patched, you know yourself that segment's only got another 20 years left in it, you know, before you have to renew that section. So you can pretty well judge where you're going to go over a 20 or 30 year period. But funding's there's never enough money.
So, Mr. Chair, I suggest that when I get back in a couple of weeks, that these figures, we actually sit down with a member, Michael Johnson,
Yes.
with these figures and with Sam, invite him into the office and we sit down and go through these, yeah? And if we're going to do it with the federal fellow, we'll do the same.
I think that's a very good idea too, and I'd even wonder whether we should ask council to write a letter to support that. But probably when you, after your meeting, I think would have a lot of perhaps a lot more emphasis on that, and perhaps yield more results. Mr. GM, welcome. What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for being late. I was in a regional development meeting that I couldn't get out of, so my apologies. Look, I don't know how much you've been told. You've obviously read the report. I spoke to both the director and assets manager a couple of weeks ago and said, I think we need this report for this meeting so that we can start to get our ideas ready as we move into the budget. I think Jeff's done a fantastic job of trying to identify the shortfall. The difficulty now is, where does that shortfall come from? You know, now we've got a bit of an idea of what we need. How do we go about it? As we've identified in the report, money is one thing. Maybe there's some efficiency gains we can look at. Maybe there's some opportunity for looking at, you know, our practices and how we do that, and that will all be investigated. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a funding shortfall somewhere, and we need to find that either through the existing programs, which short services other programs that we're running, or through further external funding. I just heard the Mayor's suggestion. I think that's a good one, that we take these numbers now to the state and the federal government and I guess make a case for increased funding. The problem with increased funding predominantly is for it's predominantly funded for capital programs, and a lot of this is obviously maintenance, and it's just not the type of thing that most governments are funding at this stage. So we need to really make that case and start to lobby for maintenance funding.
Yeah. Thank you. I also wondered in perhaps some of these roads that we're speaking about, Yeronga Road, Hunter Road, and some of them out in the Merriwa area, wouldn't they be capital, because we're after funding to tar seal these roads?
Yes, I think for the ones that are initial seals, for the first seals, you'll get possibly some capital funding for those, but it's the ongoing maintenance which is the predominantly largest cost in this report, which won't be funded under those normal programs.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, is that Mr. Phelps that I see there in the background? Lovely. A lot of our development contributions, the Section 94As, come from rural developments. Yet we don't build parks or anything on the corner of Car Springs Road and Bunnan Road, so I don't know why we're worrying about that. Can we investigate talking to the minister about using those funds for these roads? This is the Section 94 was set up for the city, and I understand it, and it's a great program. But if you don't live in the town, and we've got a lot of parks already, we've got a lot of parks, and we're not exactly building new developments at the moment. So I think we need to start looking how we utilise that money and how we better utilise that money.
I think that overall you'd have to talk to the Director of Environmental in regards to where the Section 94s sit at the moment, but we don't have a lot of funds in those development areas. I know over the past 2 years we've secured a bit of funds, but it's money from councils, major developments that have been going through, but we don't have that as a silver bullet that will make the shortfall come through. So I think when you really do weigh that up, we'd have to look at what the actual Section 94 actually does state, but I don't believe it's out for the rural areas. It's money for in town. Anybody else has got any other comments?
If I can add to that, Mr. Chair. Normally, Section 94 is now actually called Section 711, so it's under the new Act, it's 711. There's actually two mechanisms for raising funds. One is 711, which is a fixed fee based on the development. 712 is the following clause in the Act, which gives you an alternative method, which is simply 1% of the development cost. Now, if you're raising funds under the old 711 or the Section 94 model, you have to have a Section 94 plan, and that plan has to identify where the funds will be spent. Under Section 712, you have a little bit more discretion and you can spend that money more widely, but it still needs to be spent on capital upgrades. You can't use it for maintenance. So the constraint in all of these is it has to be used for capital upgrades to service the development. So there has to be a nexus back to the development. And in any case, we're not going to get anywhere near $2 million per annum in developer contributions. So there's a couple of constraints there that make this a little bit difficult. We could spend maybe some small amounts of money on some very small specific projects, but not widespread as being suggested.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think again the point is that the state government aren't funding us enough, and that they've put the burden onto local governments, and we don't have the pockets deep enough to pay for the maintenance. And it actually is a problem of state government, and it's been happening for a long time. And we're the ones that we are responsible, but we're the ones that look particularly bad because we're not doing the maintenance, but we don't have the money. And I appreciate, I mean, I know that roads are really important, but then so are some of the other services. And it seems to be a thing that other services miss out when we start having to apportion money to the roads. And we obviously need to have our roads fit and roadworthy and usable, because that's, you know, communication, transport, accessibility, everything that goes with all of us living in country areas. But it must come back to the government. So yes, it would be great when the mayor meets with our local member, and we need to put it back on them. It's not us being slack about roads. We don't have the money, and they need to give us the money to do the maintenance. And great that we've got the funding opportunities, but that's council staff taken away, you know, writing those grant applications, which takes a lot of time. We need to point out to the state government that they're just defrauding us of our money so that we can maintain these roads. Thank you.
Just Mr. Chair, one quick one on that. Just to be fair with the state government, I mean, I think we received 6.5 last week on 15 bridges to the state, which leaves us 2 in the Shire. We received another 5.8 for sealing at the Moonam Flat roads. So, I mean, we need additional. That's the issue. That's right. So the meeting, I don't think is going to hurt, but make it very clear that we need this for a sealing program, which I've already talked to Michael Johnson about, 2 Pacific roads in the Shire. So all we can do is try.
Thank you.
Just further to my comment before there, Mr. Chair. I understand that it's not a silver bullet, but every little cent helps. And we're looking down the barrel of another, 3-year term or whatever we're doing next. of not being able to fund this stuff. And you know, just on the state government, the state government actually during this term of council have put into the Upper Hunt region 185 million. You know, they're not just. I get that they need to be. It's an unfunded. Roads are an unfunded mandate. They love it because they can talk about it whenever they hand us money and then they walk away. That's the best thing about state government. It's all care and no responsibility. But we need to get into them about our roads, and that's what we need to start doing now.
Thank
and
you.
with that, I actually have to step off. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Sorry, Councillor Abbott. I have to go. I need to go and do some medical stuff.
Thanks. Thank you, Councillor, for your participation. And yes, we excuse you. Look, I think too that the general feeling of the meeting is the fact that we keep pressure. Should we have a resolution recommending to council that we continue and to press the state government and federal governments for increased funding for not only our capital works but also for our maintenance program. Is the maintenance, can that be put together?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can work on a resolution to that effect. But if you resolve something to that effect today, we'll tidy that up for the council meeting.
I'm happy to move from the chair.
Second.
I've got a second. Yes. So all those in favour? Carried unanimously.
Yes, sorry, what did you resolve? No, I'm totally in agreement, but what was the resolution?
That excuse me, I've got a little problem. That the general manager put together a resolution where the feeling of the meeting is that with that we are not being funded sufficiently for not only our capital works but also our maintenance programs on our roads, and that we continue to lobby the federal and state governments for increased funding to meet these needs. I'm happy to let the GM put something together in a more coherent manner, and I think it'll be all. We all agree upon that anyway. Thank you. Okay, so mover and a seconder for ISC 3.10.
You moved it.
I've moved. It's all done.
I seconded.
Yep, that's it. Well, that's right. Those in favour. I thought it was but I thought that was to the motion. Change it.
You changed it for the GM and put the motion up to council.
Okay, all right.
Word motion.
Yeah, well, I thought it the other way. Okay, let's turn over the page to page 7, ISC 3.11, Grant Funding Major Works Survey and Design Program. Philip or Jeff, I don't mind.
Oh,
Jeff,
it's a quick report. This has been great. I've never had three reports follow each other so closely. Ange came in and described the way Yeronga Road was. We've just gone through our needs and improvement programs for the rural road network. And on top of that, we're all chasing grants and stuff. So this is about grant-funded major works, survey and design program. The reason we need to do this, we have an outstanding, we're getting a fair bit of additional funding, and we're just falling a little bit behind in what we'd call shovel-ready works or shovel-ready plans on people's desk. And someone's actually, I think the general manager suggested they should have dust on them. So, you know, we should have them ready 2 years in advance. So to accelerate that program, we need to outsource some design and some surveys, so we can then allows us to do the Yeronga roads and the Clifflands roads and the Middlebrook Road. Council will do that in-house, but these are major jobs. So at the end of the whole purpose is just to have a set of plans, specifications, geotechnical information, all the heritage and you know, flora and fauna values and all that wrapped up, ready to go. And as soon as we get funding, we can go our tender documentation, specifications, and we're not going to do the works ourselves. So when we do get a grant for $500,000 or $6 million or whatever we're lucky enough to get, we can start that job tomorrow. So at the same time, on top of that, after all it's decided, then operations will have to have a plan to do the work. So we're doing it in-house, or 3 months to get it out to tender and accept the tender. So that's the basis of this report. We're just looking for council's approval that because if we do go out and outsource the design, there is a cost. I have some design, survey costs attached to the report. Design costs, I won't really know till about the 16th of this month, 16th of March. We have 5 companies putting in a tender or a quotation for the works at Brook, which is 5 Ks, and the works at Hunter Road, which is 6 Ks. So that'll give us a really good indication of the current market for design. So we'll have a good cost of what each project will cost us, just going to estimate. And that's it. So at the back, as attachment 1, that's the list of works. So, and we've had warning, you know, like it's going to be more difficult. Councils are chasing funding, and if we're not shovel ready, we've got a chance that we won't get the funding, and that'd be a real shame. We can't let that happen. So, at the moment, I said the 2 major jobs that we're doing is Brook Road, which is the first stage of going over the Barrington Forest, which is a pet baby of the member. Up this way, we've got Hunter Road, which is our #1 priority for initial seals. I never thought it'd get sealed between Moonam Flat and Elliston. It's finally going to happen. We've got $2 million worth of funding for the first stage of Hunter Road. We've got to match that. And then we're chasing a bit of funding for the last 2.5 Ks. Yeronga Road, the survey will be undertaken by council, more or less straight away. The design of that will be either outsourced or council, depends on how we go with our own scheduling. Clifton's Road, which is another road close to town. Council will do the survey on that work. Of course, we can do that survey around town because we have the remote that we can just run around because there's mobile coverage. The design will be outsourced. Brook Road, survey outsourced, design outsourced. Yeronga Road realignment, we have 50,000 in this current budget. That's probably a 4K, 6K realignment, and it'll involve 2 bridges, and it's to get away from those really bad slip areas that could go, you know, they've been there for many, many years, but we need to start planning and get away from those and the Brook itself. You go down the list and we've completed a lot of stuff, Hunter Road, Brook Road, Regional Road 62, 9 Ks ready to go there. And Mufford Street needs upgrading, Ringwood Road at Merriwell Way. Council will do the design and the survey on that. That's a gravel overlay for 1.3 Ks. And
Jeff, just on that, excuse me, just on that Ringwood Road, is that down on the southern end before you cross the...
yeah, the gully there, 6.8 to 7.8 Ks.
Cross the river.
Yep. There's one bad section. There's 1.2 Ks of really bad road, and that's it. The rest of the road's quite good.
I know.
So that's what we've earmarked the 450,000 for.
Yes.
So it's a goer. And the last one, Ned, last but not least, is absolutely fantastic, is the bridge replacement program, $6.9 million.
Yep.
We're ready to rip. So we've got the GTEC happening now, surveys happening this week. Once we get our alignments, our simple alignments through there, we're going out to tender, and hopefully we'll get 9 in Group 1 of the Stage 1.
So, Mr. Chair, Jeff, as I spoke last week, I spent a fair bit of time with our local member, Michael Johnson.
Yeah.
That's one big issue he had.
Yep.
At length, we spoke last week about he's been shovel ready.
Yep.
He means shovel ready.
That's what the report
Which is Yeronga Road is the shovel ready on the S-bends and whatever. But he said he's finding in the whole state, all councils say they're shovel ready. And he made it very clear. There's not very many shovel ready. So all I'm saying is we need to be on the front foot and be ready.
That's right. The member said that we were discussing after the successful announcement of our bridge replacement program about shovel ready works and stuff. And that's what the report's on our desk and we're discussing today, so we can get council approval. And all works at this stage will be funded within current budget allocations, so there won't be any additional funds required, but they'll be taken away from other road. You know, if there's any funds left, there's funds in our normal design program at the moment because we've been doing other works on 358 and some other stuff. So we should be able to fund most of that outsourcing stuff.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just going to add to what Jeff said. There's a number of advantages of this. Since the minute I walked into this organisation, I've been concerned about the capital works program delivery. This gets us at least 12 months ahead on a number of design projects. So we're not then waiting for design in the pipeline to be completed before we start works. So that takes out one impediment. The second is that it gives us better estimates at budget time. At the moment, we've got it around the wrong way. We're doing our budget estimates before we do our design. This gets our design done in advance. We allocate a little bit of money in one financial year, get those designs. We have much better knowledge going in, and we don't have that embarrassing situation where we're coming back to council saying we got the estimates wrong. We'll be, I won't say we're going to be 100% accurate, but we'll be a lot more accurate than we were previously. So there's a number of benefits to doing this way, and I see very little downside, to be honest with you.
Thank you. Jeff, I just have a question on the bridge replacement program. The one on the Bobbyella Bridge, can that be also include a realignment of the road? There's two sharp bends that go around, sort of an S bend. And I'm just wondering whether it's feasible at this time to make it, to realign it.
Well, certainly, actually, we had a look at that one this morning. We have it over there on Gavin's desk. It's currently on an alignment that's within the road reserve and right on and where the existing bitumen road is, up Ironville Road. So very hard to realign either way, Gav, at this stage. But we're going to, once we get the survey done, we'll certainly be able to have a better look at it. Our goal is to, because we're doing 15 bridges, there's nothing worse than, especially through winter and stuff like that, that there's going to be a truck, a load of cattle stuck on the other side of a creek because of a thing. Cattle prices are 2,000, 3,000 are the highest they've ever been. So a lot of the cases, our desire or our goal is to actually build a new structure right next to the existing one, especially on our gravel road network. So we're not losing that connectivity between the farm and the sale yards. And where we can't, we're going to put in a side track. So we just need the survey. We've had a quick inspection. I think we're going to look at a couple more. Our hardest task is going to be the replacement of Brook Bridge down here between the two creeks. But that's going to be the one that we're working on at the moment. But the rest of them are pretty well straightforward. Right next to the other one, 4 metres wide, 4.2 wide, 12 metres long, all standardised. Pop them straight in, finish them quickly. So we'll certainly have a look at that, and we'll take that on. That'll be noted anyway.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just want to ask, Brook Bridge, is that the bridge? Is that on Moody Road? Is that the steel bridge going to Aberdeen, or is that? No, that's
the small white, the 100-year-old structure on Brook Road itself, between the highway, I guess, and Back Musselbrook Road or Nandower Road.
That's the bridge you're talking about.
The steel one, the little 100-year, 110-year-old one. Yes.
So that's heritage listed?
No. But obviously, I don't want to lose it. We'll either pick it up and relocate it somewhere else, or it can remain. Trouble is, if leaving these old bridges in place, you still have to spend money to maintain that bridge to make, if anyone gets on it. So it costs you a lot more money to maintain that structure than it does to things. So we'd love to actually pull it down, put it somewhere else, or just lock it up somewhere.
And will that go, is that already decided, or will that go out to the community?
It'll have to go out to the community, but we don't plan to build the new bridge at this stage where the existing bridge is. It's a very difficult site down there. So there is, we've got a house there right next door. So we just need to spend, there's a fair bit of work in that structure to replace that at the moment, in that alignment to get through there. There might even be land resumption. I don't know. It's just that's one of the ones we're starting on today or next week to meet the 2-year replacement program guidelines.
So the community, through you, Mr. Chair, will hear more about that bridge?
Well, it's no different than the other bridge, I don't believe, but I know there's a push to make it to heritage listed. But I have 2 other structures up Brook that were old truss bridges, and they've been identified as they've got historical value, but it's only local significance. So you photograph an archive rather than retain. So that's something that certainly the council will have to consider over the next 6 months.
Okay, just further on that traffic counter, I'm just wondering whether was there any resolution on that we would put that traffic counter back out on Yeronga Road?
Yeah, we'll do it tomorrow if we've got one spare.
That'd be good, because if we can show that there's increased traffic, which there is increased traffic, it boosts our argument for better funds.
Through the chair, the point was to do it at a moment in time where the traffic is at its maximum, so that we're not getting a false figure. So it'll have to be timed with when we next do a grade.
That's good. Okay. All right. Any further questions or comments?
Moved.
ISC 3.11, moved by the Mayor, second by the Chair. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
As against, I think the ayes have it. I might also make a comment. I think this document would be very good, and Ange, I'd really like to see you keep this, especially the first section, because it's not only explaining but also proving what we've been talking about. So I think we need to put it in one of our archives. Yeah, okay. So if we'd like to turn back to page 9, I think that's right. Hang on, we didn't do the front one, did we? No. Page 1, ISC 3.1. Philip, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if you didn't want to hang around for the rest of the meeting, you're free. You're free.
Thank you.
So there's actually been a couple of updates on this since this report was written. So I'll make note of that as I go through. With the exception of the IWC, there hasn't been any further movement on that. So we still are waiting for DPI and Safe and Secure to come back with us with a funding deed so that we can progress that project. The Drinking Water Quality Risk Workshop, we actually received that report last week, which is quite comprehensive. So we haven't really got very far working our way through that. We did receive that report, and the water team will assess that and send comments back as required. The UV pre-chlorination and fluoride project, so we actually got the specifications from HUN H2O yesterday. So we certainly haven't been through all of those. That's also quite comprehensive. But we're still progressing with getting ready to go out to tender for that project. The Aberdeen Hunter River intake improvements, we're also preparing a tender to do pump replacement and electrical replacement there. Soil Conservation Services have been on site this week. We should, depending on what time of day it is, we could have replaced the damaged screen there today. And they should be finished by tomorrow, their works. There was a bit of delay there where they damaged the screen and we had to de-water to replace said screen, which is one that sort of dragged on a bit longer than we originally thought. The Drought Management Emergency Response Plan. So I'd probably talk to this a bit more in the water consumption update, which is also in this meeting. So I might just leave that for now, but we do want to proceed with that with our neighbouring councils as soon as we can. Any questions on those items?
Yes, look, I have one. Philip, the drinking water quality assessment risk, how much, I've heard various statements regarding underground water, et cetera, but if that was to take place, I don't think there's an understanding of where the aquifers are. And if those underground water bores had to be shifted somewhere else, then you may not just get into those particular aquifers. I'm just wondering how far advanced or will that affect some of our underground water supply for our towns?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, Mr. Chair. So the risk is about, I guess, if there was an identified risk with our current water supply.
Yep.
So one of the risks identified through that process was that we have bores that are located within built-up areas within town. So that in and of itself presents a risk. So a lot of this process is identifying those risks and identifying future works that could be done to improve that. The next stage would be whether or not that involves bores located elsewhere or improvements to treatment. So it's many steps down the road. Is that sort of more what your question is?
Yeah, look, if those underground water bores had to be shifted because they're in town,
yeah,
you just don't say I'm going to go a kilometre out there and put a bore down, so I'm going to get water. You might get water too, but you might get it with a lot of iron or other sediments and things in there. It just doesn't work that way. And that's what I was concerned about. Those water bores at Merriwar are very good. They're very stable, and the quality of the water for underground water is very high. And so that's just the point I was making. Do we have time on that, or is this something that's a long-term plan for the state government to implement?
It's a very long-term plan.
I hope it is.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily end with new
Okay.
bores being sunk out of town necessarily. It could just be addressed. It's just a risk that needs addressing, and it could be addressed via treatment improvements and such in the town.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions to on this subject? If not, we could turn over then to page 5. I have a question, reference 11, Castle sewerage system. Was there any investigations to an alternate method of the system out there to what it was originally planned?
There was an initial option study done
Yes.
in terms of whether it was a pressure sewer gravity system, upgrades to existing on-site systems. The result of that options analysis that was done at that time was that gravity sewer was on balance the best solution to address the issues for Castles. However, given the current cost estimates, we are sort of revisiting that as a bit of a sanity check, just to make sure that we are still implementing the most cost-effective, the best solution for Castles. So we're sort of...
I was just wondering whether there's a different method of disposing of the effluent, that's all. I think there was some discussion.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I think you're referring to the conversation we had when we were up in Castles. That conversation was in regard to more the transport costs and not necessarily the treatment costs. When I came back from that meeting, I did speak to the acting director and asked him to investigate, which is the explanation he's just given. We're a member of the New South Wales Water Directorate, which is a group of New South Wales councils that are water supply authorities within their own right. We've started to collate a number of projects from other councils that have been done just to test the current pricing. What it's showing, though, is that whilst there was some savings in some locations, some of the costs probably aren't that much different for alternative sources as they were for a conventional gravity sewer. So we'll keep looking at that. But, you know, generally, if you can avoid deep trenching, and that's so in flat ground, you've generally got to get fairly deep trenches to get grades. If you can avoid that, sometimes these alternative methods do come into their own and become more cost effective. And so it's just very reliant sometimes on terrain and also some of the local conditions.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you. On pages 5 and 6, do we have any questions or comments, please? If not, we'll turn over the page. Pages 7 and 8. Any questions or comments? If there being no questions or comments, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder.
Seconded.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
As against, I think the ayes have it.
Thanks, Mr Chair.
Yes. Turn over then to page 9. I am right on that, aren't I? Page 9. Works Program Infrastructure Services. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. First up here, we've got Willow Tree Road, but there's actually a separate report that will follow shortly, so I'll give you a little bit more detail on what's happening out there. Bunnan Road works, Alton Drive, due to start next Monday. So there'll be some activity out that way. Yeah, everything's progressing along okay with that project. Tollum Road rehabilitation works are progressing out there as well. The drainage works probably 80% complete, with the pavement reconstruction underway as well. Waverley Street curb and gutter. Probably 2 months ago we did the western side. Now we're doing the eastern side. That's progressing well too. We should be finished those works, you know, within a month. Other than that, it's just general maintenance and I mean, you've got a list here of the grant funded projects. So, you know, if we get to there, I can answer plenty more questions if you've got any.
All right, just the one question again, I think I've asked it before. Stages 1 and 3 pre-construction works on this on MR62.
Yep.
Really the bad section of that road is Sophia Creek to Kuan Bridge, Kuan Shearing Shed rather. What's happening there is because that is the worst section of the road.
So I think initially we identified 2 spots that we could get in and get done in a timely manner, and also we had funding for those 2. So that's why those 2 sections got well, progress first. Yep. And there's a little bit more detail in the Sophia Creek section as far as design work. There's a few more elements in there that we need to manage.
Yeah, okay. All right, any questions on that particular part? Or will we just turn over to the works delivery grant funding works on page 17? I'd like to turn to page 17 and 18. Actually, I came back through from Tamworth yesterday and noted the works are being done on the Murrundi grandstand, etc. there. Yeah, it's progressing. You'll probably give us an update on that, Al, later, will you?
Tell you now if you like.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good.
Well, the block work's done. They started work yesterday on the roof members, big LVL beams, and yeah, they're aiming to have it ready pretty well on start of the football season. So
yeah, good. Yeah, I was pretty surprised actually. Very good. Okay, that's page 17, page 18. Do we have any comments or questions on those projects?
Yes, really, Mr. Chair. The drought stimulus package, that's supposed to be finalised by end of June, those jobs?
Mr. Chair, correct.
We're running out of time.
We are.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? If you'd like to move over to page 19 and 20. Jeff, you did tell me the bus shelters were just about, do you think they could be up within a couple of months, or do you think that's optimistic?
No, we need
Okay, good. Very good.
So just through the chair, the only real hold up there is the construction of the shelters themselves. They're with a local company and he's got quite a bit of work on at the moment. So
I see, right.
if there's a hold up, that'll be the reason.
Okay, well, look, that's good. Thank you anyway. And also 020, the upgrade of the Merriwell CBD and the footpath. How are we going with that? Are we on track or?
Yeah, through the chair, we're on track there. Unfortunately, I was out there today and I was expecting to see some work on the ground, but that didn't happen. But I'll be following that up. Okay. So work's meant to commence.
It's very, very close to being started. Well,
yes.
That's great. That's good news. Thank you. And the Castless Town revitalisation, the new amenities block, has that been ordered or is that finalised? How do we go with that?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, the toilet block has been ordered.
Right.
But yeah, we're just progressing the other elements of that area. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So
the kids' playground stuff too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that the playground, it'll be a tight timeline given that there's 12 to 16 week wait period for delivery on that.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, no further questions on that. Turn over to page 21 then, please. Works delivery in progress, Brad Shire. Roma Road, how are you going with that? Because there was some considerable washouts on the Hampshire Road and I think on that Roma Road, there was a washout there. Through to attend to that?
Through the chair, as far as I'm aware, they spot patch those.
Did they?
Yep.
Righto, okay. Thank you. All right, any further questions or comments? If I can have a mover and a seconder, please.
Seconded.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Thank you. Turn over to page 22, ISC 3.3, Special Projects Update. Alan, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Scone CBD and Kelly Street redevelopment. Well, it is being reported to in another business paper, but we just finished the last of the community drop-in sessions on Saturday morning. It was the 10th one. We've had lots of people come through, about an average of 20 per session. And the community consultation submissions closed today. So we're expecting a reasonable number in about 70 odd 2 days, or late last week or yesterday. And but there's been quite extensive work done too. Graham Wilson, project manager, has also been to lots of meetings of various groups. I've been to a few as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of effort to get the message out. Armadale Brook, it's finished.
Just go back one, Mr. Chair, 133 Kelly Street. What's the CBD revitalisation got to do with that?
It's always been linked to even in the same budget area. Okay. And yeah, it's always been a subset of the CBD project. And there will be a report coming probably to this council meeting about the tender. We've been talking to there was a reports, I don't know, probably about, I've been close to 2 months ago about a tender for that work, and we're over budget, and we think we've got that squared away. So
we may be going to see some action.
Yeah. So Armadale Brook Bridge, it's finished. Had the opening not last weekend, the weekend before. Overall, a very good job, and Mr. Augusto should be congratulated on project management and our works delivery guys for the approaches.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, on that one, I attended that along with our local member, and I certainly made that very clear up on the staff need to be congratulated. It's a very professional job, and I just hope that it lasts that way for many, many years. It's a very positive story, and the staff need congratulating, outdoor staff as well.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
Thank you. So a note, there's available budget, $147,474. What are we going to do with that?
Chair,
yes.
Comment on that, there is still some invoices coming for the guardrail, for the ceiling, and for some more gravel, and for some more works. This was done a week and a half ago. So there's over there's probably about $80,000 worth of bills that we still have to pay to that. Plus we have to spend the last piece of work that we still have to do is rebuild fences on both properties, because we had to push them back to allow room for the works. So we'll consume all of the non-contingency money that was allocated to that project. And we will still have, my memory might fail me, but about 70,000 in contingency money unallocated.
Okay, well that will come up to probably the next infrastructure meeting or the one after the what's been spent. That's right. Yeah. So we recorded then. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Turn the page. Page 23.
That takes us over to Cameron's Bridge. I might pass it over to Mr. Augusto. I could tell you about it, but I'll be giving you the information second hand. He's got a very good handle on it.
You might want to come up here, Chris.
Yeah, you better come up and so it can go. Turn the microphone on, please.
Mr. Chair, the Cameron Bridge, I'm currently assembling the tender documents. It's hoping to go out to tender, hopefully next week. There was a bit of a hold up on that project with trying to do a land acquisition negotiations with a local adjacent landowner. When that was, I guess, terminated and agreed by council to terminate it, then we had to do the geotechnical study because a lot of money is associated with geotechnical studies. So we didn't want to drill the holes until we were exactly sure where the bridge was going to go, because I have to be very close to where the foundations of the piers are going to be driven. So the geotech, they always take 3 to 4 months before you get that work completed and the report back in. Unfortunately, we try and speed them up, but that's how long it takes. And then we're just waiting on one small report from Bridge Design, which will accompany the tender documents. So I'm hoping to get that back next week, and the timing will all go together, and we'll go out to tender for that bridge.
Okay, that's good. So it's all progressing well. Yeah, it just takes that length of time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions regarding that?
Stick around.
Better stay there. Thank you, Al.
These next few projects are Chris Augusto's projects. I can take you through them again, but it's up to the chair.
And Brook.
I know that REF's in, but Jet, you tell the story.
Mr. Chair, the Brook Road and Hunter Road, the section just near Moonam Flat there, they're both being parcelled up. We're going out to tender for the design. Now that tender was advertised 2 weeks ago. It closes Wednesday next week. The review of environmental factor reports has been completed and finalised for both of those roads. The geotechnical studies were done before Christmas time. We got a draft report in on Brook Road last week. So not wanting to bore everybody with details, but the tender's out for the design. REFs are done. We're just waiting really on the geotech reports to be finalised, but that's not going to hold the tender up because they don't need the geotech work to put a tender price in, but they need the geotech work to do the design. So the design will close, the tender will close for both of those roads, as I said, next Wednesday, and then we'll go into a tender assessment period and aiming to get the report to council for the April council meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. Continue, please, Al.
Well, turns out
That's about it.
The next
yeah.
project.
Memorial Gates. Yeah, that's about all.
Through the chair, we've had some really good progress on that throughout January and early February. We had meetings on site with a heritage consultant from Newcastle area. He's a specialist in these type of fields, and with the representatives of the sub-branch of Muswellbrook RSL sub-branch and Murrurundi RSL sub-branch, because Murrurundi goes through Muswellbrook. And there's an agreement on the scope of works. The heritage consultant gave us the tick of approval that what we're doing will be preserving the heritage of the site, and the areas, the things that we wanted to change and would enhance the site. The RSL sub-branch are getting approval from, it's not Australian Defence, but it's the Australian agency that approves the usage of the logos of the Army and the Navy and the Air Force. So the RSL sub-branch are getting approval for the usage of those insignias. And the design, Brett Hales is doing the design for the slab, the structural design. And when that slab, I'm expecting that this week, and then we'll get some pricing for the works.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Being none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please.
We've got one more.
We've got one more. We'll keep going. I'll ask.
Page 25.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, replace 2 fire damage independent living units, Liverpool Lodge, Murrurundi. Demolition's complete. The builder's started. He's done some electrical work. and his concrete will turn up probably later this week.
Well, it is happening. That's the main
It's happening, Mr. Chair.
It is happening.
Mr Chair, just while we're on projects, the junction bridge at Rook that the powers that be took back to restore it, do we know what's going on with it?
Yeah.
Oh, Junction Bridge.
Junction Bridge.
RMS are undertaking the maintenance on the structure itself.
Yep.
But council's still responsible for the approaches and the
Right, so
side
can
track.
we follow someone up? They took it on. If they didn't take it on, we would have been on the way now building a new bridge. We're just coming, and those farmers up there are going to be going back through that crossing. You can bet anything. That could be out most of the winter. So all I'm saying is chase them up. If they've said they're going to restore it, well, let's get them on to restoring it.
Yeah, they have done some work up there.
No, it's pretty ordinary.
Right.
Yeah.
Not cutting you off, Al. You got any more? Good on you. Okay, well, that's good. Anyway, mover and a seconder, please.
Second.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Turn to page 29. Am I right on that? Yeah. Capital Works update.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
You pinched at your side.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So we'll turn our focus to the attachment and we can go through that. And if you want to take us through that, Mr. Chair. While we move into that, you probably, with that previous report, you probably will hear more from Chris in the future because this will be our last Infrastructure Services Committee meeting before his retirement. So we wish him all the best. Just thought I'd just note that for the people watching at home.
Yeah. That's just for you, Al.
Yep.
Well,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
okay, well,
I was going to say something at the end.
well, we might leave it till the end, yes, because I'd like to make a comment too, but it will be a good one.
So do you want to,
Okay,
you happy to take us through?
all
Mr.
right,
Chair?
okay, turn over the page then, reference line number 1 down to 40. Do we have any not complaints, concerns, comments on that? I just noticed the number 13, Merriwood Administration Meeting Room. Look, that'll be really good. I'm really pleased to see that happen. We haven't used it as yet, but I think we're thinking about all the committee meetings we have out there will be transferred there so that we'll be able to always have the facilities there. We've got to go on Zoom when it's all ready. So I thank very much those who have been involved in that for getting that completed. Okay, I'd like to move on to line item 41 to 80. Okay, no comments or questions. Turn over page to 81 to 118. I like the large font too. Thank you. Okay, any comments or questions? We'll go on to 119 to 159 on page 5. Sam, could you tell line 128, the waste Merriwa upgrade stage 1? I don't quite understand that. Could you elaborate?
So that's the refueling station at the depot.
Oh, I see. All right. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I see. I was thinking the other one. Yeah.
So-
I did see all that work being done.
Yep.
Okay. Turn over the page then to page 6. 160 to 194. Sam, can you tell us what's happening at QN pit? There's some problem there? Or what are we doing there?
Through the chair, so a couple of issues that we've encountered. Our DA's expired, so we're in the process of updating that. And then we've got a little bit of work to do with mine resource management. So we've got a non-conformance for that pit, and we need to get that cleared before we do too much more work in there. From what I understand, it's just a matter of sending that report through to mine regulator, and then it'll be ticked off.
Okay. Now, is there a crushing plant out there at the QN pit?
Not yet, but it shouldn't be too far away.
I think a lot of the road, the material that's on the roads, having those larger round stones, and they just don't make a good surface to hold together. But I'm understanding that when went through the crusher, that particular material was improved significantly. Is that right?
Yep, through the chair, that's correct. So we've actually got well, the tender's been out to win and crush material again, but with the DA and the mine resources being outstanding, we haven't progressed that at this point, but we are now at a point where we can win some material. So there will be a crushing plant out there in the near future, coming weeks, hopefully.
That crushed material is far superior to the earlier type material. Altogether.
Yeah, that's correct. It didn't quite meet our RMS spec, but it wasn't far off it. So QN pit is by far our best quality gravel that we've got in the area.
Mr. Chair, just with respect to this item, so what does it mean? The DA has run out, so what do we have to reapply, do we, as a council?
Through the chair, yeah, that's the process currently. Yep, we're submitting a DA for.
So how long does that take, and how long will we be asking for?
So currently we're using the DA that was existing. The process could take up to 12 months by the time you go through and do all the environmental assessments. So yeah, could be a 12-month period. Yeah. So
through you, Mr. Chair, does that mean we're not using any material from the quarry at the moment?
No, that's not correct. We are using material.
Right.
So we're using the current DA, even though that it's expired. We still use
so we can
following those principles, that agreement.
So so we don't at the moment have a DA to use the quarry, through you, Mr. Chair?
Not as far as I understand.
So are there legal implications with that?
I'm not sure.
I'll need to talk to our planners just about the operation of that. If we're not crushing and not winning material, I'm not sure if that allows us to continue to take material out under the consent or not. So I'd need to check on the conditions of the consent and how it's been structured.
So we through the chair, we've just been in negotiations with the landowner, and that side of that's been approved. Yeah. So.
And also, I think you mentioned through you, Mr. Chair, an environment issue. Was there some?
No, through the chair, it's not an issue. It's just part of the DA process.
Oh, you have to do an environmental impact study?
Yes.
Right. That's all part of the DA?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, you can't enlarge anything more on the DA?
Not at this stage, no. But yeah, the current situation won't prevent us. It won't hold up the works that we're starting on Bunnan Road, which is our most critical thing. But if we don't progress and follow through with the items that we need to get that sorted, then it will in the future prevent us from crushing. So it is an urgent item, but currently it's not impacting on our ability to deliver at Bunnan Road.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Line item 195 to 228.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just noting at the Parks and Gardens at 197 and underneath there, just finalisation of tree planting programme to be scheduled. Do we have a schedule yet, given that this is like prime season?
Through the Chair, it's programmed for planning late April, May. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a wise decision. Okay. We're on 229, that went back to 258, so we've got nothing more on that. 259 to 278. How's that Morella Street Causeway? The agreement been reached, or is it just like with the funding authority because it was changed and all that? What's happening there?
Through the Chair, I haven't got too much to update at this stage. They requested some additional information, and I'm not sure whether we've got that through to them.
Yeah, through the Chair, we went back to Muswellbrook Council, who's the lead grant body, or the actual grant attainee, through the Resources for Regions. So we've gone back through that conduit to go back to Restart in regards to what is required. Restart have held us up quite significant time. So it's been sitting in their court for nearly 9 months. So then it's come back to council now with definitions around what the original scope was, what the change in the scope was, which we've already provided that information to them. So we're sending that back through Muswellbrook and back down to Restart to see where it is. At the moment, the problem with the actual funding agreement is that it's outside the actual funding timelines. So that's one item that we need to chase up and see where that is. But we don't have a straight line of sight to the actual funding body. It's through Muswellbrook Council.
Mr. Chair, just with respect to 232 and Jefferson Park Skate Park toilet block, what is happening there? Just I note that we have the project costs exceeding the revised budget.
Just through the Chair again. With that, we'll look for savings within the sporting grounds area. So unfortunately, the project went a little bit over budget at this point.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So exactly what was the project again? What was it in its entirety? What have we done there?
So through the Chair, it was to renew the toilet block.
Is that all we've done at Jefferson Park?
Well, that was the scope of the works. We've renewed the fence around the eastern side of the field. Yeah, no, that's about it. Yeah.
So we didn't put a new grandstand in, or was there?
Not for.
Because that's where they play football, isn't it? And do
Correct.
the Highland Games. Is that the Highland Games Park, or is that different?
It's not at that exact location. It's further out the back on one of the fields, as far as I understand it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we're just looking at further through you, Mr. Chair, further savings.
Okay. Let's move on. 259 to 278. Yeah. 279 to 299. Bridget. Any further questions or comments? We'll just move on. 300 to 326. Okay, now can we just keep going? 327 to 362 on page 12.
Through you, Mr. Chair, have we come, just looking at the Bill Rose complex stockpile site work, so it's slightly off point, but have we come to a decision what we're going to do with that patch of land on Bill Rose or near Bill Rose, the one where we were looking at either a community garden, skate park or off dog leash area?
Through the chair, yes and no. We've got a couple of applications in for grant funding for those projects, so we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, it hasn't been determined yet. That will come back up through council.
Thank you. And just with the stockpile site works, do we have to have, do we have to have permission to stockpile site works? Do we have to have a DA in for that? I mean, how do we work that one out?
My understanding, and the director can probably correct me, is if it's over 5,000 cubic metres, you need a DA for stockpiles, but if it's under 5,000 cubic metres, it's part of your operational operations and it's not required. Is that still the case?
I'm not sure on the specific figures, but yeah, I think there's a threshold. Yeah.
And would we be, is it possible to find out?
Yeah, we can follow that up for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, 363 to 401 on page 13. No questions or comments. Page 14, 402 to 442 and 443 to 449. Okay, no further questions or comments. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, please.
Moved.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Thank you. I'd like now to turn over to ISC 3.5, Village Reticulation and Murrurundi Reservoir Monthly Report. Chris, you're still here. Would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on what's happened in the last month, and I don't want to steal any of Gavin's thunder from the next report or an upcoming report today. But the detailed designs for the base case and alternative case with the detailed costings were provided, and it still doesn't provide an easy answer. It still requires evaluation and assessment, and Gavin's report will talk to that in more detail. And it will also talk to what we're going to do, what we propose to do in the next 3 months. So, like I said, I don't want to steal Gavin's thunder or impact. But if there's any questions apart from on what's written there, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Just over the page, on page 37, 4.2, current high risk. The following are the top 3 risks of the project. Village connection and pricing policies not being acceptable to the communities. Poor public support for the reticulation of villages. Some areas of the village may not have enough support to justify reticulation. I think we had some, or did we have the community consultation? Was there any change to that? That's all.
Through the chair, that's probably best to address in the next report.
Okay, yep. All right, that's fine. Any further questions or comments on ISC 3.5? If not, I'll call for a mover and a seconder, please. Seconded, I'll second from the chair. All those in favour, please say aye. As against, I think the ayes have it. ISC 3.6, village reticulation, special update, detailed design and proposed methodology. Author Gavin. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. If we remember back to 2019, we got tasked to go and develop designs for reticulation in these villages as part of a secondary priority of the STM pipeline. So we did that. 2020, we went to the concept design for community consultation. There's some support for these systems, but one of the key takeaways was we're struggling to identify enough demand to support a town water system. So at that time, we modified the project slightly to include a different level of service where water quality is easy to manage. We've been calling that rural reticulation. There's no formal name for it. And alternate or identification of how and where we could put in water fill points. So as at 2021, we have the detailed designs done. With that, we made a set of cost estimates. They're presented in this report. There is one, we've been doing some work to verify the cost estimates. These are produced mainly by a quantity surveyor who specialises in this field. There's significant variance in contract prices that have been seen around the region lately, which causes a little bit of concern and drives some of the proposed methodology. However, the other outcomes of this, there's still, you know, unless we can develop or identify where we can find further demand, we can't supply to a town water standard. The design is executable, but remembering, of course, our project methodology was we designed to the wider extents, and now we're in a situation where we need to choose which components we build, or now we're also alternatively at the stage in design where these designs are now, you know, that work scope of design is complete, and if we're going to choose not to move forward with the project or not to move forward at this time, this would also be an appropriate time to make that decision. So as you'll note in the report, we've budgeted, so we have a budget around the 4.2 for construction, of which approximately half is, you know, council's money, and half is grant funded. And with that, we've given a bit of an idea of what could be funded, the actual order of priority or construction hierarchy with constructability hierarchy, as I termed it, not wanting to, you know, sound disappointed to various people, but, you know, that logic of how and what can be shifted a bit, but that's about the extent that there is funding for.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So it was made very clear the 4 meeting or 3 meetings I went to that day some time back, all the villages wanted was a water access point standard pipes, correct?
Through the chair, that's partially correct. That was definitely tabled as something that a lot of residents thought was all that they needed, but when we got the written comments and feedback, there still was some people that didn't want the reticulation, but it's one of the options that we've looked at in this report is it's something that we could deliver, or the extent of what we deliver. Yeah.
There wasn't much support for full town water.
Correct.
Also, may I note that that was testing at, demand at cost equals about $20,000 as well. So how much that factor plays into it is difficult to determine. However, there's definitely some people that have stated that at no price would they be happy.
Yeah, that is true through the chair that there was, there were some feedback that was that, there was no price that they would want a town water supply. So there was all the extremes, and I guess that's what caused that real concern in terms of establishing that demand. And you need a certain amount of demand and buy-in, not just literal buy-in, but also you need people to use the system, or you just build something that is going to give you grief down the track in terms of water quality. Probably the best way is if we go back to the recommendations of the report, where what we really want from the community today is a recommendation for us to proceed down the path of probably another round of community consultation and pricing up in more detail a rural reticulation supply standard. So doing I guess the minimum is one way to look at it in terms of getting water supply to these villages, which was definitely some of the feedback that we took away from the first round of consultation. That would be a policy that doesn't exist yet, that has to be written and approved. It's something that would have to be run past our regulators in our funding body, but we can go down that way. And more or less, it would be similar to the connections we have in the pipeline itself. So it would be a lower pressure supply, there'd be tank fill only, there could be interruptions to service, there could be times where the water doesn't have chlorine residual or it doesn't meet all those Australian Drinking Water Guideline standards. So it would be more of a drought proofing mechanism more so than a town water supply. And that would be to try and keep the costs low, and that would be to try and potentially have a situation where there's an opt-in connection, not a compulsory connection.
What percentage there was there of those in favour and those against?
I don't know the numbers off the...
Mr Chair, the meetings I went to, out of every room, probably 1% wanted it hooked on. That was eye to eye. I don't know what the feedback...
Yeah. Do you recall, Gavin, what the figures were?
So can I say it wasn't 1%. Off the top of my head, 30% at that price point. But we did write a report to the council in November or December with those exact figures, numbers, breakdown.
Yeah, we'd have to confirm.
I didn't bring that.
You're talking 30% of those present in this room in Parkville and Whingin and Rungai?
No, the numbers. Sorry, the numbers weren't present in the room. It was, we went off the actual people that actually took the time to send us a form back.
Yeah, no, I'm talking on the 100 odd people that we met that day. There was about one in each room that actually wanted it. So things must have changed from to eye to eye to...
Well, through the chair, I think there may have been some skew. There may have been people who were on the fence or slightly supportive that maybe possibly in that environment didn't want to, publicly put their hand up and say, I want it. Yeah, it was definitely the majority was. Yeah.
So just to clarify through you, Mr. Chair. So are we now at the stage, just to clarify, are we at that stage now where we decide we may not go ahead with this?
We're at the stage where if that's a decision we wanted to make, now would be the best time to make that decision. That does mean that there's grant funding that wouldn't be getting spent. And so that's, not something that we typically want to do. We want to be able to extend the network as efficiently as possible, financially efficient as possible, which would be to utilise that grant money. And that's the current budget sum.
So if we don't have community support, which is that what you're saying? Is that what there isn't really an appetite for going down this road? But
there is a chance that we push forward to spend that capital money, which is grant funded, but we put in a scheme that doesn't have the support and is a long-term operational and financial burden. So there is that risk there. Yeah, that's a decision that needs to be made.
Would be wise to do that? I mean, if we don't have support for that and it could become a financial burden, yeah, should we be thinking that? I'm just, so we're obviously, and thank you for your report, we're obviously at that stage where we have to make decisions where we go, and it's quite costly for the people so far. So that's obviously been something that's put them off. So but we're now looking at maybe doing the rural connection, but still no appetite for that.
Correct. So I guess what my intention would be, what the recommendation of the report would be to go back for a second round of consultation with the completed designs, with the rural supply, I guess, supply principle, to see what the interest is in that circumstance. We wouldn't say that we're not going to go ahead without going back to the community first, because they have to be involved in that decision. So I guess to step back, it's more, the first question is the committee happy to proceed with that sort of lower standard, potentially lower standard of supply network, to keep those dollars down based on that first round of feedback, which was, the majority were not terribly supportive. That's sort of the first thing. The second part is to endorse the proposed project methodology, which is in the report. And that is, government hasn't quite got to that part of the report yet, but that is to potentially go to a schedule of rates tender to try and get more clarity around the actual costs, because at the moment we've just got estimates that there's a wide variance in those estimates, so we can get some clarity around that as well. And it's also that we may just deliver areas of the villages in this priority, in this order of efficiency. That's more or less.
Okay, well,
yeah.
Chairman,
really, yes.
would it be wise for Gavin just to explain what a rural reticulation standard is compared to a town water supply?
Yes, please.
Sure. Well, there's no definition anyway. For the purposes of what we're doing, we gave it a definition. And the idea is to try and keep the operability of the system so it's not too much of a drag on our operations. So one of the things with potable water is it degrades over time, or the chemicals that keep it safe and disaffected at least degrade over time. It's still probably a lower risk than your own roof supply or groundwater, but there's little way to ensure that. To keep that water fresh, we need to draw lots through the pipeline. That's just, if we don't have the demand, we can't do that. You end up in a no-win situation. So we designed this sort of, I guess, policy or standard to be like, there's no guarantee of the water quality. Like, we'll put tip water, good water in at the start, but there's no good guarantee when it gets to you that it meets requirements. There'll be no reservoirs in the system. So one of the sacrifices you're making is around consistency of supply. So if we have a main break in headworks or a pump station or something like that, typically we have reservoirs to cope with to repair it. That won't be available. Typically we hold a firefighting reserve in a reservoir. If we don't have a reservoir to save money, we won't have such a firefighting reserve. Typically a reservoir is a really good way to set a consistent pressure. There are other ways we've looked at for this, but we'll see a bit more fluctuation in pressure. And if we're only tank filling systems anyway, because there's no guarantee of supply, we can allow the pressure to run quite low, which helps us out where there's a grade. And fire hydrants, if we're not providing a fire system, fire hydrant at contract price at the moment, somewhere between $2,500 to $5,500, depending on which tender. There's huge variances in tenders at the moment. Which tender you believe the most? So there's a fair saving. And look, a lot of these communities, the houses are well set back from the road. The utility of fire hydrants is much diminished anyway. I guess that gives it flavour. The actual pipes we put in the ground, we're proposing to put the same quality of pipe into the ground to the same size that we would normally. Bear in mind that we're a water supply authority, we don't really want to run pipes that are upgradable later to a town water standard. And we're only talking 100 mil pipe for most of this, so it's not.
Yeah, through the chair, there'll be an element of future proofing in there. We don't want to do anything that's not going to meet a town water supply standard in the future if that's what happens. But the best way to think of it is the connections that we'd be proposing would be similar to the connections, the rural supply connections on the pipeline itself, the rural properties along the length of the pipeline. It'd be a similar arrangement to the applied to the villages, similar to that policy.
So, Mr. Chair, we've got no costing on this, have we?
No,
you can't, unless it's zero. From what I got out of those meetings, no one's going to hook onto it. Everyone that I spoke to on that day, that's not with the paperwork, all they wanted in each village was a water stand for take their own pods down, get their own water, water their own cattle, fire hydrants, etc., etc. I just think we're doing a massive amount of work here, and I don't think you're going to get any support if there's a cost. It's only my idea.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just back, I think you made a mention of if we change this, will we still be eligible for the grant money? Were you going to check that, or?
In terms of if we change the type of connection, yeah, we'll confirm that. Yeah. And that would be inclusive if we were to just do some water stand pipes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If that was all that we did was to put some fixed stand pipes in each village, that would be well inside of the grant funding that we have available. So essentially that scenario would be doing that part, which we obviously would do, but there'd be a remainder of grant funding that would essentially be handed back.
Just to clarify, we do need to think about drought proofing our communities. So if there may not be an appetite now, but we do need to think about water. Water's a finite resource and it's running out.
Correct.
And we have had issues.
Through the chair, yeah, that's 100% something that needs to be taken into account, is that when this money was given to us, we were in the height of the drought. The drought feels like it's broken, but it'll come back around any moment. The other thing to consider is the money that we've got for these villages, given their size, is unlikely that we'd get it again. We were quite lucky to get this money, and we said as much when we did the first round of consultation, that if we do pass the opportunity to do something now, it's very unlikely that we'd get that again anytime soon. So it is something that needs to be considered pretty carefully.
And just further, so this report is looking at the rural reticulation. So are we ruling out the actual town water standard?
That's more or less what this report is aiming to achieve, more than anything else, is to get the committee's, I guess, agreement that we're not going to continue to pursue that full town water supply standard because of the cost and because of the lack of demand. Yeah.
Thank you.
If we were to put in the standpipes in there, would that mean then that we would have water in a village if there was the appetite to have a town connected? Would that then be continued on in that way from that standpipe?
Through the chair, not really, no.
It's their first and last chance.
Well, if people are not going to want it, where do we stand? I mean, we can put this in and then find that people are not going to connect or don't want it. what's the answer to that?
So through the chair, what we can do is to do a limited extent. We can confirm the pricing first of all by doing a schedule of rates tender. That's something we can do. We can do a very limited extent of reticulation to a rural standard within each village, possibly with an opt-in connection or something to that nature. Use the extent of the grant funding that we have. There'd be a cost to council in that regard, which would be a cost to the other water ratepayers within the Shire. But you would have it there, and you would have it there for, you know, with the hope that you've done all you can to future-proof, and when the next drought comes and there'd be some interest and people would connect, that is something we can do.
Are we in agreement with that? That should be the better
Yes.
idea to do that.
I think so. I think obviously we're concerned about the community appetite, but I think this, I mean, it's wonderful that it's looking so green and it's rained and everything, but it is problematic when you come to making these decisions because everybody thinks this is normal and we all know it's not. No, I am in agreement with council's recommendation.
Yeah, okay. So we'll then have some costings on that, would we, Phil?
Correct, yeah. So once, if we went through that process, we would have more finite figures, and then the next stage would be then to draw a line as to what extent of the villages that we would deliver.
This would mean then they're recommending, they're accepting the committees 1.1 and 2. That would be what you were just describing. Is that right? That's clarified?
Mr. Chair, can we half step back there? Can I seek to clarify your point on costings?
Mm-hmm.
Well, or perhaps explain. We've got a good bill of materials and links and everything out of our design, which is the first part of building a good cost. Most of the items in it, we've got a good understanding of the a high probability cost. So what I'd call a P80 or a P90 cost. There's one item that tends to dominate our cost for this, especially a rural retic system, which is the pipeline cost. Now we've got an estimate that's been provided by our quantity surveyor. We've found and went to seek to, because it's such a dominant cost, we went and sought to confirm that that's a realistic price. We're seeing contract rates on either side of that. Perhaps $100 either side per metre of the mark that we've used in this cost estimate. What it means in reality for us is one or two village segments that we either, if we use too conservative estimate, that we're not going to construct and our project will come in under budget, or we pick an extra segment and our project is over budget. As it stands at the moment, your cost estimate's telling you that you can do core areas of Parkville and Whingin. That's about the extent. If we can demonstrate a cheap price, we can do part of Blandford. There's some logic, construction logic, in which parts of Blandford you would have to do first, the ones near the pipeline rather than the ones on the far side of the river, simply because where a pipe needs to run, we can bring it up anywhere, but you don't do that. It would cost you the same amount as if you took it through that part of the village. So I guess my point really can be summarised by, we've got a decent costing for it. We're worried about the cost of one item rather than commit, this is the exact extent we're going to go to, and then not be able to fund part of it. We would seek to reorient some of the tendering process and allow us a bit more room also to negotiate with the tenderers. So the costings in here are real. It's just there's some variability in that cost that doesn't meet our normal standard for bringing it forward to you at this time, but there's nothing we can do about that without going to tender.
Well, okay, what is it that you want then? What is it that you want, Phil?
The recommendation is still stands.
Would suffice?
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
Gavin was just clarifying that you're
I'd
aware
just like to
methodology
see a bit
does-
more clarification on the costing. That can be included in the next report, can it?
Well, that would mean essentially that we'd be going to a schedule of rates tender, yeah.
Which, Mr. Chair, it's certainly not the normal practice to go to tender without an intention to actually build. So it's kind of, we have to decide that, we're a high probability of building before we would consider.
Well, through the chair, yeah, I think that's what we were establishing, that there would be an intention to build some part of the reticulation to try and get to maximise the grant funding that we have available.
All right.
The conversation.
All right. So the recommendations will allow you to do that. Or do you want to add to it?
No, I think this will, as it's written, will allow us to proceed. Yes.
Okay. You'd like to move it? Okay. And I'll have a seconder. Okay, I'll second it and proceed at this stage. I do have some apprehension about it, but I can see that we need to perhaps move and go this far anyway. So I'll second it. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? I think the ayes have it. Okay. Turn over to page 58. Water consumption update and summary. Philip, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This will be a fairly quick one, hopefully. Essentially, we've come out of summer, and this was just to give an update on how we've gone in terms of our consumption. The short answer is very, very well, almost too well. Our revenue's down. I think we have the Shire-wide, I think we're down 29% compared to last year. The only centre supply system that's up is Murrundi, which you would expect. It's good to see, given that this time last year they're on level 6 water restrictions. So the rest that follows is, I guess, just for your information to show how each supply system has performed. What will happen, though, is to the council meeting, we'll be tabling a report about potentially reducing restrictions from level 2 to level 1 in light of how we're gone in terms of consumption and also relevant changes to climate and storage levels. Glenbourne's up over 50%, I think still rising. But that's, yeah, pretty much the point of that report. If there's any questions, happy to take.
I don't have any questions. Do you have any questions? Okay. Move and a seconder, please.
Second.
All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. If you'd like to turn over to page 65, ISC 3.8, Willow Tree Road upgrade. Gavin, you have the floor. We need you on the microphone. And I see Sam having a smile. It's not his turn. Good on you, Sam.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Essentially, just report on what's progressing over the last month since January, essentially. Obviously, the road was closed in mid-January from the project control group. That's still in place. We've had more geotechnical investigations and assessments done, which have pretty much confirmed that. GHD were engaged on the 22nd of January. So they're nearly 2 months in, and we're expecting concept designs in today for the works. The next 3 months will probably
is the most thing. So as I said, the concept reports are due in, the geotechnical options report. We have spoken with GHD and there's some requests for some additional surveys, particularly in the areas that have been cracked, and some supplementary control marks for the future use during construction. And the only other thing is the project control group's meeting at the end of this week as well to give us an update as well. One emerging issue is, as outlined this year, although the road's closed, there's still people accessing it illegally, going either through the waterfill barriers or cutting chains with padlocks on them as well. So I know Sam's got his operational guys to move some more substantial concrete barriers in place to try and restrict that further, but the concern would be that access is still going through by cutting chains and locks as well, which is the major concern for council anyway.
Now, there was the design tender was to get back to, is it GHD?
Yep, GHD.
By July. Is it still on track?
That's still on track. So as of the concept designs were, the original initial concept designs were due in yesterday afternoon. I spoke with GHD yesterday afternoon and they were running a little bit behind, so they're due in roughly lunchtime today. So I haven't checked my emails since the meeting started, but they're due in today as well.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay, well, the sooner we can get that the better and get, anyway, look, we all know there's still concern regarding the whole project, etc. But anyway, the sooner we can get that done and some costings then, so then it will once that comes in, that will be the concept design.
Yep, so they'll provide us with a couple of options. They've got to give us at least 2 options. And then through the project control group in council, we'll decide which option we'd prefer or a combination of both options. Right. Then they'll develop that into a 50% design, which we'll then review again to see if we're still happy with it. At 75%, we'll review it again, and then 100%, a final review, and then that'll be issued for construction, essentially with bill of quantities and their estimate, and then we'll go to tender from that stage as well for construction.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions or comments?
Yes, just prior to this whole project, would have been a geotech report done then, was that? Would there have been? Before we started in the very first place, Mr. Chair? Through
you, Mr. Chair, yes, there was initial geotechnical investigations completed by Macquarie Geotech, and they're based in Dubbo and Tamworth, I believe. So there is that report, but obviously since then the site's changed considerably. So it's obviously quite there's a safety concern there, and it's quite a moving site. Like even each week we get reports from one of our field officers, engineering assistant, and he's picking up changes consistently through each week. So it's still quite a mobile site.
So through you, Mr. Chair, so there are continuous geotech reports being done?
Yep, so as it stands, there's daily inspections to pick up any major changes, weekly inspections that pick up the smaller change that he can pick up, and that's done, both of those done by council staff, and then a monthly inspection by Douglas Partners to give us a more detailed inspection as well.
So is that Douglas Partners?
Douglas Partners.
Yep. Yes. So, Mr. Chair, is it possible for councillors to read the initial geotech report that was first done for this project, this road project?
Look, I think that I'd have to refer that to the general manager, but I just get a little bit concerned. I've got another letter here now because it's just starting to get out into that third area where people just are endeavouring. There's still those very much endeavouring just to identify who they believe was at fault, and they want to have a public humiliation. And I'm very concerned about that. I won't support it. I've been very clear about that. I won't support it because I believe that those are matters that should be dealt with in council, as the Local Government Act tells us to do so. So I'm a little bit concerned, but it's not my decision, and I would have to, because I know that there is doubt out there that the geotech report is not that it's excessive, and that they believe that the road is still passable. Now there are those out there that believe that strongly, and they are going full as much as they can to try and have themselves have that view justified. So I'm just not sure whether, I know the report was very thick, but I think we as councillors, the initial one, I'm not sure what happened to that. I know it was do you have any?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess what Councillor Abbott's asking for is the very first geotech report, which then informed the first design. Mm. As we all know, the construction didn't follow the design to its nth degree anyway. So the actual ground conditions have changed considerably due to the works that have been done, the modifications to the soil and the pavement types that have occurred during the construction and the subsequent movement of soil. So the geotech report that was done, 2018, 2019 or thereabouts, which was the initial one, probably bears very little resemblance to anything that's up there at present. I don't see a problem with letting councillors read that, but I'm not sure what it's going to give you, because we know that the original design was done to that geotech report. It was the construction methodology that didn't follow that design. So I think that's undisputable. I don't think there's anything that you're going to get new from that. I'm just trying to, I guess, trying to understand what the purpose of giving that to you. And I don't, as I say, I don't have a problem with councillors reading it. I'm just wondering for what purpose it will be used, because I take Councillor Campbell's concerns that we've had a number of media outlets trying to, I guess, draw conclusions from partial pieces of information, and I'm trying to avoid that reputational concern at this stage, that's all.
No, so my interest is to see go right back to the initial stages, because I'm aware obviously there's an investigation to happen and I don't know where we are with that. But I'd just like to read the very first recipe as such for the road. I would be interested. I've only read one other one that was provided to councillors in the confidential area of our intranet. And I'd just like to read the very first one.
Yeah, as I say, I don't see a problem with providing that to you. I think it just needs to be read in context that it was done prior to the first design and doesn't necessarily represent anything that's out there at present. So it's going to be quite different to what would be on site at this stage. I'll work out a method of getting it to you. I don't even know how big that document is, so we'll look at how we can make that available to the councillors. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just quickly, through the chair, this report may have already been or will very shortly be emailed to the people who attended that consultation session, or people who gave us their contact details, and that'll be a regular thing to get those people who are concerned this report as an update on a regular basis.
Yeah, thank you. I just reiterate what I said earlier. I'm from Merriwater. I know that people are still have all sorts of ideas, and that really the identification of who they believe is wrong is. In fact, I was in Tamworth. I had a conversation with a person who lives up there, and he was really only interested in who was at fault. And we've got to be careful of that. We've got to be careful of that. It's our reputation as a council too. And so I'm not in favour of having those reports circulated widely.
Yeah, it's just for me. I'm just asking it for myself.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyway, that'll be up to the GM. Yeah. How should we handle that? All right. So a mover and a seconder, please. ISC at 3.8. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. I'd like to turn over the page now to ISC 3.9 on page 71, and the recommendation that the committee receive and note the report. Answers to councillors' questions. Do we all have we read the answers, and are we satisfied?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have read the answers, and with respect to Roundup being used in my question 1, Are we thinking about we are thinking about moving away from Roundup. So just why was Roundup used?
Through the chair, so that process was undertaken by LLS, so it would be the chemical that they determined was best suited for that purpose. Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, would we have a conversation with LLS? I take it that we can't direct them, but could we say we have concerns because we're trying to move away from the use of Roundup as a council?
Through the chair, we could, but given that most of those concerns with the use of that chemical is more to do with operator health and safety, is my understanding. I would prefer to defer to the experts in that field, and that management of that weed is what they think is the most effective and suitable. It was a local land services project.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So with local land services, is sometimes their decision made on what they've always done and what's always been done to date? Because we know the evidence against glyphosate, which is Roundup, is that it's hazardous, that it's dangerous to human life, as well as herbs, grass, I mean, whatever they are, vegetation. So yes, I mean, we're moving along that pathway as the Upper Hunter Shire Council in looking at not using Roundup, glyphosate. So just when we're working with partners like LLS, how can we have this conversation? I take your point that they've been doing this, and this would obviously be in their department where they are experts, but things are changing, and there's a looming lawsuits are happening in the US and around the world, and we don't want that here.
Mr. Chair, I might try and answer that question as best I can. First of all, our environmental section has been looking at alternative means, and I think Mr. Pringle gave a commitment to bring a report back to the committee and the council on the findings. Yes, there are some lawsuits overseas in regard to glyphosate-based products. Our understanding is in a lot of those, the products haven't been used in accordance with the proper process. So we always use these products in accordance with the proper safety measures. We use the correct PPE and their correct application rates. I will let Mr. Pringle bring his report back. However, my understanding is that initial investigations probably point to glyphosate being the most appropriate chemical for weed treatment on a large scale. Some of the other products have their own OH&S related issues. Certainly the use of steam has been investigated in other councils as well, but that brings its own issues with scalding and the like of the operator. So none of these products are perfect. We will always continue to use them in accordance with the appropriate work health and safety measures in place. But I'll let Mr. Pringle bring that report back, and that might give you some indication about where we're heading. To address your bigger question about directing other authorities, that's probably one step further removed from actually directing our own staff and becomes a little bit more complex. At the moment, the use of glyphosate products is prohibited, and so I would imagine most parties will continue to use it until there's a directive to otherwise, at this stage. So that's probably the legislative position we sit in at the moment. It's legal. Most organisations are using it to some extent, and it's probably going to be difficult for us to say not to use it when they're using it within the confines of the proper work health and safety arrangements.
Thank you. Also, could I have some information on how the drone, how you do it on a drone? I don't know how you would apply anything by a drone. So if there's any information on how application by the drone on the mature giant reed, would that be possible?
Yeah, I believe it does have a spray tank on the drone, so it has the ability to hover or fly over some of these areas where you can't get in with a machine or a backpack. I think we may even have a video of some of the operators using that. We'll try and track that down. I saw something on YouTube not long ago about this, so we'll track that down.
Thank you. And also with respect to my question 4, and about carbon emissions being noted on the various reports, and council's replied that there are in council reports, they already include sustainability implications, but it doesn't actually really, it doesn't say our actual emissions, and it's more like motherhood statements that we're, you know, trying to be good and sustainable, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we are. So yes, is it possible to be more specific? And I raised this at the Development and Environment Standing Committee this morning as well, that we need to list more, and whether we take advice from other councils who've already done this, because we need to be aware of our own emissions as a council.
We can, if some of the plant that we purchase has some of that information available as part of the operating material data sheets, if you like. I'm not sure it's available for all of our plant, but and some of these, I guess, implications would relate to operations that wouldn't necessarily be fleet or plant related. It could be just our normal day-to-day operations. So I'm not sure the difficulty of doing that. I'm happy to try and explore it if it's easily available, but a lot of these are generic carbon emission rates that you then just simply extrapolate for the hours of operation. And I'm not sure how accurate that is, but more than happy to try and do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it might be, we may be assisted when the actual Ironbark sustainability plan comes back on how we are to operate. But thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, so those are last month's questions. I've got more to ask for this month, but I'll wait my turn.
All right. Mr. Mayor, are you happy with your responses? You weren't? Oh, I printed just, yeah. Sam, the privacy screen's gone up on that Rogers Pavilion, hasn't it? It has. I thought I was correct. Same part was dark. Thank you for doing that, pursuing that matter. All right, if we just need to note that, don't we? Or do we need to have it moved and seconded?
Probably just have moved and seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded that our councillor questions have been answered. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, I think the ayes have it. Okay, do we have any councillor questions?
Yes. Just with respect to the Scone Revitalisation CBD, is this the appropriate place for me now to ask a question about it? Yes. Okay, so I just want to mention that I do have concerns about the proposed cycling route, and in my view, they're problematic, the lanes that we're putting forward, and basically with respect to safety. And I'm just wondering whether we could revisit the cycling issue and seek best practice advice from towns and perhaps other countries that have supplied safe and connected cycling infrastructure to their communities without community hostility. I think at the moment the current proposal is both contentious and unsafe. Where the cycling lanes are, I think they're unsafe, and I know that there's some hostility as well. So I think that is something we're going to have to look at. So we want this to be a win-win.
There's a CBD Main Street Committee meeting next week, I think, Alan. We will be looking at all the feedback from the community on that. I've been looking at the feedback as it comes through on a weekly basis. Second to parking is the cycling issue, so I think that will be high on the agenda. I don't know what the answer is at this stage, but it'll certainly be something that will be discussed at the committee as to whether there's an alternative and a better opportunity to look at cycling through the main street.
Thank you. It could be like, I know in Tokyo, for instance, they have big pavements, but then they also have alongside the pavement, they have cycling. But anyway, yes, I'm sure council can have a look at best practice. My next question is, what is council's position with respect to the Hunter gas pipeline? Because I know as a council, we have a position on no CSG and no mining. So I'm just curious as to know what our position is, having a pipeline coming all the way through our shire. And I wonder why we haven't come out already against it. I'd just like to make the point that we declared a climate emergency in February 2019. So we know that gas is a fossil fuel and that it drives climate change. So I'm just wondering if council is likely to come out with a position on the Hunter gas pipeline against it.
Councillors, that's a decision for council. If you want to have a position on that, staff are more than happy to collate some of the information for you to consider. But we don't have a position at this stage.
And then some of the other questions I had, I think I've already asked, and one was about the Brook Bridge, so I think I've asked that one. Yes, so my last one is, would we think about putting a moratorium on any new petrol stations in our shire? Because they seem to be coming to us about new petrol stations, and I'm wondering why we're not pushing more electric vehicle charge stations or points or whatever they're called. But because we know that petrol, diesel, they're finished basically, and that other countries are moving fast. And I think of my own, well, no, this is my country too now, but the country where I came from, which is Britain, which is where they're already looking at moving away from fossil fuel driven vehicles. And we obviously need to think the same. And it does alarm me that we're constantly looking at providing, we're approving DAs for petrol stations.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, to me, it's really market driven at the moment. It's probably not appropriate for council to try and second guess particular development based on what it thinks the uptake of a particular technology will be. Certainly in the cities, we're already seeing a lot of service stations converting and installing electricity outlets. But my suspicion is that the limitations on electric vehicles at the moment mean that the uptake of electric vehicles in the more regional parts of New South Wales are less. But at the end of the day, I presume that's going to be a market-driven result before we see any major change. I'd be probably hesitant to recommend that council stops approving petrol station developments to try and force one technology over another when maybe the economics don't support it at this stage. But again, that's a decision for the councillors, and if that's something you want to do, staff will provide the information to you in order to make that decision.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. The ramp update, condition of cattle grids throughout the Shire. It's been going on for years. I think we deferred it because of the drought. I'm not putting farmers under the... There are some ramps out there extremely dangerous. So if we start bringing that back up again, that was years ago we did it.
We did inspections 2018, 19, 20, and then now we're just doing spot inspections as we get requests.
Like up Carsprings Road, for instance, I did a tour around the other week. Some of the ramps are dangerous. Again, and the other one was
so just with the committees. So you want us to undertake the inspections, knowing that it's the landowner's responsibility to remove them or fix them up. So yeah, you'll be happy for us to put that back onto the landowner at this point.
Well, I think so. I think it's years ago we actually sent letters out, and during the drought we thought, well, we wouldn't worry about it anymore. But there are some ramps out there owned by landholders, and the responsibility has to be.
So we've got the other issue as well, permit holders. Not all the grids have permits. So then, therefore, if the landowner doesn't take responsibility for that grid, are we in a position to pull them out?
I'll leave that one up to you.
It's about $5,000 a grid. So,
yeah. Anyway. And the other one, quickly, I think is it Ranch Road out here going up to the old gun club?
Correct.
Pretty ordinary. I went up there this morning and a small car would battle. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? I've got a couple of questions. I understand that there's $400 million for the region for a grant that was announced, I think, by the Deputy Prime Minister. How much of that money is available to the Upper Shire Council?
Mr Chair, we got about 1.2 million for 4 projects. One on the Golden Highway for some widening of a culvert, a pedestrian crossing on the New England Highway down East Sermon Street, and then 2 projects on Bunnan Road, which was shoulder widening and reseals, and the other part of that was guardrail installation.
Right, so that's on that section from, we're talking about, from Sophia Creek back to QN shearing shed, is that right?
I'm not sure which location. Oh, sorry, Sam might know the actual.
Yeah, so that's additional money aside from that project there. This is specific to shoulder widening. It's not a whole road rehabilitation, so it's just a widening of the shoulder. And the other money was the guardrail project. So that's it on the regional road network, which will be Bunnan Road and Gundy Road, and potentially a little bit on Willow Tree as well.
Right, okay. The area behind Collins Street on the western side, that's this is at Merrywall. That's still a block owned by council. Scully's Scully Crescent, I think it is. Scully Close. Now, there's material growing there, probably, right up to the top of the fence. And there was an inspection made and there's a lot of rocks in there. Now, because it's not subdivided into blocks, that still is council's responsibility. And do you know anything about this, Sam? Can a grader get in there and grade that material back out of the way so that it can be controlled with a smaller?
Yep. So through the chair, we've been in there and had a look at it. There is too many rocks in there to slush it. So we have proposed that we put a grader in there and do 2 cuts wide. If that hasn't happened this afternoon, it will happen this week.
Yeah, no, look, that's good.
It's already
really
programmed.
good. Yes. Okay. Excuse me. Have you been able to do anything more with that drain up above Scott Whitten's place at Castlers? It just needs the grader in there to finish that off and to form that, well, it's sort of a small contour, because they put in, Dalkeith have put in a contour above the tanks which takes all the water, and it's really only the water that's coming off the road now that goes down in front of that section. Can that be done? There'd be probably, I suppose, about 60 metres.
Anything can be done, but I guess we just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up to repeat that same practice right across the network. If we go in and clean the contour bank up on private property.
No, it's not a contour. No, are you sure that's private property? Not the top section. They've done that. This is right down there. There's a. You came out there with me, yeah. Are you sure that's private property?
It's the section you and I walked along, Sam.
Yep.
Second or third day I was here. Yeah.
Yep. So that, as far as I'm aware, it's private property. There's not an easement through there. Well, there is a road that goes around the back, but as far as I understand it, it's on private property.
What can we do about the water getting down into that fellow's place? What can we do about that? Because it definitely does come off the road now and goes down, just runs in there, just runs straight over.
Well, the 2 contour banks above, if he's corrected those, then the amount of water getting down to that point shouldn't be as great.
It doesn't, but it comes off the side of the road because there's no pipe underneath there. It comes straight in the side of the road and it just swings along into there, into that section.
It's only for a couple hundred metres that it catches the water. Initially, what was happening, it was coming from the top of the hill and from all the private property coming down onto the edge of the road. Then there was a contour that took it back out into the paddock, and there was 3 contours down that. So there was one up the top, there was one just above the reservoir, and then there's another one just below, next to the person complaining about it.
Yeah, well, that the one on the east comes down, empties there, and that's where this drain would come round and empty there and run down into the creek. It wouldn't take, look, it'd take a dozer, not a dozer, a grader driver half an hour to do that and would stop that water from getting over there. So what responsibility have we got as council that is coming off the side of the road? It's not coming off out of the paddock, it's coming off the side of the road.
I think maybe we should just take that on notice.
Yep. Yeah. Can we try and do something? Yeah, okay. All right. Look, I've had a letter here that was sent, and I'd just like to bring this matter up. And I think some of it will be addressed by the it's on the Scone Road, the MR 62. This particular person travelled the road from Scone and then to Aberdeen and picked up her daughter from Aberdeen. During a travel on the Merry Walks to Scone Road, she was in a queue of traffic comprising 2 B-double trucks followed by 2 cars with caravans and herself. One of the cars with its caravan attempted to pass the B-double trucks. This was a disaster waiting for to happen. 1, the road is too narrow with an uneven surface with very few sections of the road safe enough to pass. 2, the normal school bus from Scone to Merriwell was coming in the opposite direction. 3, as you are aware, this road takes a higher than normal load of traffic due to the closure of the Willow Tree Road. Maintenance on the Merriwell to Scone Road should be a top priority whilst on the Willow Tree Road is closed. I was of the opinion that the trucks were not allowed on the road during school hours. If this is correct, there are no signs indicating this at the Merriwell to Scone. It could have been a very serious accident. Trucks are coming from away from other to the JBS Scone. The cart freight may not be aware of any restrictions on the road during school times. I think a lot of that will be addressed by 2 things when that section of the road will be upgraded. That's the first section and the second section, not that section from Kuan Shearing Shed to Sophia Creek. That's the middle part that won't be attended to at this stage. Or was it correct? That's where some of that money for road widening will take place.
No, there won't be any money spent this time around on that section, or not through that additional funding. However, I'm just trying to think that there's not a lot of overtaking opportunities on that road. In the roadworks that we'll be doing, there'll be an opportunity on top of Owens Gap to overtake, but that'll be the only additional one that we're adding in there.
Yeah. I mean, drive the conditions. You're crazy to go around 2 B-doubles. Anyway, the issue of the B-doubles being on that road during school hours, there are limitations to B-double use on that road. It's the responsibility of the B-double operator to make sure that he knows and is aware of any restrictions on any road that he uses his truck. So I'll contact our friends in the weight loads, and I'll put that road on a bit of a wait or watch and see list next time we're in for weighing and stuff like that, and using the road out of during restricted hours.
Yeah.
The guardrail replacement is on Main Road 62 is mainly for the replacement of current chain mesh fencing, which doesn't meet any standards whatsoever. And the widening, the funds we have for widening is coming from Bunnan Road back just up to the hill, that little dangerous spot there. So that'll cover that. And the section we haven't done is the 7 Ks in the middle, which we haven't been successful in receiving 50% funding at this stage.
Those B-doubles would not be travelling at a high speed. I've travelled behind them because they travel to the conditions, and the condition of the road does not mean that they can travel at 100 Ks.
No.
They'd be travelling at a maximum top speed of 70 Ks along that section, and I've been behind them. The accusation there that it's an accident waiting to happen, well, that person should not have pulled out and tried to overtake if it was not safe and did not have the distance to go. So, I mean, it's not council. I do not believe it's council's responsibility to enforce that. If they want to pull out and pass and have an accident, that is on that driver's responsibility. It is narrow, and I accept that. I travel there. In fact, I travelled it last night with a semi-trailer, and it is narrow, but you you have to drive to the conditions. And I think maybe we should put a sign up. Is it possible that we put a sign there? This road is narrow, drive to the conditions, because if that's the case, then it's really the responsibility of the driver to drive to the conditions.
True. We're currently undertaking a safety audit of the road between Scone and Merriwell.
Right.
I think that's happening this week. It'll be a day audit and a night audit.
Right.
It's already been brought to council's attention, the lack of line marking, centre line marking.
Yes.
This audit should indicate where we could have double lines, so we can actually do some line marking that would stop people from even thinking about overtaking, additional signage and stuff. So there's certainly going to be safety improvements out there over the next 3 to 4 months. So, yeah, and that will really, that'll be driven by the safety audit at the end of the day and the funds we have available. But there should be some funding put towards that road, towards safety, because Main Road 358 is closed.
I must confess that I don't see whether the lines are single, because I've travelled the road so much that I just travel to the conditions on that road. So I guess but other people that may not travel as much may find it a little more difficult. But anyway, look, we brought that up, and this safety audit will probably bring out some of those things anyway. Highlight them anyway.
So the only thing, really, Mr. Chair, I'd suggest, Jeff, is get the information on that with the bus times. If that's not permitted, we need to, and even it's a good thing for the radio on a Tuesday to say, it's brought to our attention that B doubles are not allowed on this road during school hours.
It's not permitted. You can punch up any map. You can punch up the heavy vehicle map for New South Wales. It'll indicate the restrictions on that road. And all our regional roads, you cannot operate a B double between the hours of 7. I think just before school hours, because the bus is on the rural road network before school hours. It's on the road after the school hours. So it's not the 8 till 9:30. It's 7 till 8:30. But they cannot use that road, and they know that. And there's a $1,200, $1,500 fine.
I just suggested we give it a bit of plug on the radio, whoever's doing it along the way, and then we get the powers that be to follow it through.
Let alone what happens if there's an accident. It's going to be much more than the $1,500.
Responsible for their own actions. So.
They are. We cannot police a vehicle being on a road. That was.
It doesn't hurt to put it on the radio when these people are driving their trucks. They hear one of us fellas saying that we've had problems with it.
Yeah, now you've got to catch one.
Yeah.
So I'll let our weight of loads people know that we have a problem with the road, and we can certainly have that monitored.
If I can just add to that too, it did come up at the Merriwell community meeting about whether we could further restrict B doubles on that road, either during certain times of the day or more permanently. I did speak to the RMS about how that would go about. There is a process, but I think it would be, I guess, problematic to try and do further restrictions there. And I guess the other observation I made is I think a lot of people see a truck and dog combination and think that's a B double. So there's still confusion about what are B doubles, what are truck and dog combinations, and not everyone knows the difference. And sometimes people make the wrong assumption about what they're seeing on the road. So
the difficulty, of course, being if we start putting more restrictions on that road, we've got sale yards over here. We've also got JBS. We're going to restrict them. There's a lot of semi-trailers and single-deck vehicles travel that road. I think that's quite evident. There is a section of, maybe not over here, but I know in my area, that just don't want semi-trailers or B doubles or anything there. And they are not farmers. They are people away from the land or moved in. And I would stand very strongly on that, because we're actually cutting off some of our economic value that's coming into Scone. You can't do that.
I think they're 25, 26 metre B doubles. They're not 30 metres, they're not HML. So
No.
it's exactly just like a normal B double, which track just as good as any semi-trailer. So.
And they don't.
If they're using it the wrong
they're travelling
times.
very slow. I've been behind them.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you so much. Oh, hang on. Whoa. You want to get away. You better sit down. Okay, Alan, this is going to be your last infrastructure meeting, which I didn't realise. And look, I'd like to wish you all the best in your retirement. I have very much enjoyed working with you. We've also been away at some of those conferences, and we did have a good time. I must confess that I'm not sure why that they didn't want to sit next to me in those conferences after the first session. I'm not sure because, you know, I use all kinds of nice deodorants and all that sort of thing. But anyway, we did have a good time, and it was a great time of actually catching up with some of the shire matters that you normally don't discuss because of time limits. But I'd like to, on behalf of the committee here, wish you all the very best in your retirement. Thank you for your input and also your very pleasant manner, Alan. It's been really great to see you and have you here. Thank you. Can we give him a big round of applause, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. You've been the chairman all the way through this committee from my time here. Thank you. And one of the, I guess, interesting things, I used to take the business paper out. I used to work at Marriewell once a month at least, and I always made sure it was just before the meeting and go out there and sit in Ron's office and go through the business paper with him. His office is a shed out the back full of more gear you're going to ever believe. But yeah, no, interesting discussions we had. And yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, Al. Hello. No, it's Ron. No, you can, but I'll give you, he's on another number. Okay, you got a pen? Yeah. 9100. That's it? Yeah. Yeah. Talk to him. Yeah. Yeah, give him a call. You should catch him now. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Yes, we will.